Might be a good idea.
Okay, you're on.
Okay, good evening. It is May 5th, had to think for a minute, 7 after 7, and this is the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. The Board of Appeals will conduct this meeting according to rules laid out in Chapter 40A of the General Laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Robert's Rules of Order, and its own particular set of rules entitled Rules of Procedure, a copy of which is on file with the town clerk. Another copy is available from the clerk at this meeting. This meeting is being tape recorded for the purpose of taking minutes. Once the minutes are approved, the tape may be taped over.
Okay. Under new business, I didn't do a full financial review because we have Noonan's on. So what we do need, and here's the warrant, to go around, is we are down to, if you look at the first page is just the copy of what you have to sign. Postage meter sheet I gave you, so we're down to 106.19, and you have to keep 50 to keep the postage meter open, the account open. So I'm thinking what I thought was just put the 300 in again like we did a while back, because the certified mail went up. It's like almost $7 for one certified letter.
Oh, wow.
That's totally up to you, but I'm just thinking if we put it in now, we won't have to deal with it next, we'll be good for a year, hopefully. So I just need a motion
Motion.
to deposit, if you wanna go with the
$300.
$300 from the revolving account to the postage meter account.
I'd like to make a motion to deposit $300 from the revolving account to the postage meter account.
I'll second that.
Board discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Okay, and you need to everybody needs to sign that, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of April 7th, 2015.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes.
It's just one, right?
Hmm?
Just one thing.
Oh, I didn't look.
I didn't either.
Is it just one page?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Paul is absent. Okay, I put Noonan's on next, and I figure we can finish everything else after.
Okay.
Aye.
Do you want me to just give you a little background, or are you good?
Well, does anybody is everybody up to speed, or do we want Patty to?
Did everybody have time to look at the packet I emailed out?
Sean wasn't here, so maybe just do a quick one.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't introduce.
This is,
No, you didn't.
I didn't introduce because it's not a hearing, but this is Sean Dean. He's our associate member, but he'll be voting tonight. Sharon Freeman, Jeff Moore, Dave Kapnis. I'm Gina Tebow, and this is our attorney, Brian Winter, sitting in tonight. Sorry.
in with your agenda it just says Noonan's Greenhouse.
Yep.
It's the previous decision, that expires May 14th of this year, and the email from planning, an email from conservation, and then an email from Jonathan Eichman, stating that we could make a determination at a business meeting whether or not they need a new hearing, or we can, and unless you find good cause, and then in that case, you can extend the permit.
Do we need to read these in?
There, well, it's not a hearing, it's not really new correspondence, but if you want, yeah, I mean, just to give it, it's up to you guys.
What are these, if I may ask, Madam Chair?
They're just questions about extending the permit to the different boards.
Oh, I
So
thought
we
you
have
meant
town planner,
email.
conservation, a couple conservations.
I reached out to the planning board and conservation because we heard this was approved in 2013, And so I just basically asked them where they are, where the status is with them, and these are the answers.
So they're advisory to this board?
Yeah.
It's probably a preferred practice to
Okay.
summarize them, at least for the record.
Starting
Where? With Howard Snyder.
Okay. Give me a second.
Yeah, it's right after the sign.
The
There you go.
April 21st, right?
Yep.
So this was so Patty on April 21st, 2015 asked Howard Snyder, the town planner, the timeline in which they were informally working with Noonan's so that this board had an idea of the timeline of where they were in the process. Howard's reply dated Tuesday, April 21st, 2015. Patty, the Planning Office, Conservation Commission, and the Buildings Inspector's Office have met jointly with the owners of Noonan's occasionally over the past year and a half. The effort was to have the owners understand the complexity of filling, but I think he meant filing a site plan approval application with the planning board relative to the agricultural use and exemptions afforded them in the zoning act. Noonan's Florist filed a formal site plan approval application February 12, 2015. The planning board held the first public hearing on March 25th. Howard Snyder signed as town planner via the email. Do you want me to read the next one?
If you want to, or I can.
I need help with pronunciation. Stephen
Pajemski.
Pajemski. An email from Stephen dated April 15th to Patty. Patty had preceded this asking Steve also for when he began working with you. And Steve's reply, Patty, I did have a very informal discussions with a representative from Noonan's last year, parentheses 2014. The first formal filing was for a NOI, note of intent, right? Notice of intent, that was submitted last month and is currently scheduled for the first hearing tomorrow night, April 16th, presumably April 16th, 2015. Anything else I can do, please let me know. Thank you, Steve. Should I keep going?
Sure.
Okay, this was again from Steve to Patty. I think I'm going backwards in time, but from Steve. Hello, Patty. We opened the hearing this Thursday. This was he giving Patty an update, presumably. At the hearing, the applicant presented the project. The Concom voted to have a third-party review done and to conduct a site visit that happened on Saturday. The hearing was continued to May 14th, 2015, as understood. Anything else I can do, please let me know. Not that I can. Let me keep going.
No, I think this
That-
next
that's-
thing is
Done.
That's just,
Okay.
attorney,
Great.
client.
So we're good?
Yes. So if you would just like to state your case, why you feel you deserve the extension.
I think when we first started it, when we brought it into you guys, it was more like blocks and this is where we want to put it. And now we realize it is a bigger thing with the watershed, and when we put in new parking spots, you clean the water as well. So now we're into wetlands. We had to get the wetlands flagged, and so now we're realizing it's not just get it in and get it done. We keep going in steps. So I think we're at a good spot right now. I mean, the building is, we have it down printed with, what we want. It's in the site plan with all the proper parking, and we're just going through the motions right now. I think the biggest thing is we didn't realize how much we had to do to get it to that point. I thought anyways, it would be kind of like just go in, get it done, and then leave. But we're following what the town wants us to do.
We came to see you for the initial permission before we spent a ton of money, and we have spent a ton of money to this point. I think we're well over the budget. But we want to continue, and we're here hoping to get an extension, so.
Okay.
Can I ask, just for an update of, how's the project going and where are you with the plans and all that? When you were here before, it was more of a conceptual
Correct.
type of a plan.
Yeah.
And obviously that's moved along.
Yeah.
This isn't specific to the extension, but it indicates what's been going on. So can you tell us sort of where you are in the project? For everybody's
So
benefit?
we ended up we're still using the same basis of the, you know, the water, the waterfall, no dinosaurs like we talked about before. So that's all set in stone now. That's ready for approval for the planning board, the site plan review with the lights and all that stuff. Again, the cafe, the handicap spots, the fire in and out. I mean, that's where we're in the first, we took our first meeting with the planning board, and they have a few questions they want us to clarify on the lighting, that type of stuff. So that's kind of where we are right now.
So you're in process of
Yeah.
site plan review?
I did go over to planning and take a look at their plans, and they gave us, because it was the use, and we didn't wanna go into stuff that was site plan approval and get go over what the planning board does, so we took those really basic plans. These are plans, these are lighting plan
Yeah.
you have, and they're
Yeah,
actual.
I mean, with the wetland
And then-
conservation, we put in, you know, rain gardens to kind of clean up the water, storm scepters. I mean, it got pretty involved.
So have you submitted anything for site plan yet to the planning board, or
Yeah, we had our first meeting, yeah.
did they submit copies to the ZBA, Patty, for that? One of the, condition 4 of the
Yeah, I
permit
have,
requires them to submit it to the ZBA.
yeah, that was on our
comments.
agenda a while ago. Remember I had the original here,
Was?
and no one wanted to look at it. And no one
But I don't ever receive.
remembered to look
receiving
at it.
copy
Might
of
have been in China.
Oh, was I gone that much?
Oh, you weren't here.
So did the ZBA have any comments for that? Condition 4, did you
I
guys
just
already talk
gave-
about this when I was
The
gone?
comments Howard required, so it was a plan distribution, which Howard gives me.
Okay,
It was I think it was on the business meeting in here, and then, I just told the board that I gave, you know, when we did the decision, Howard got the decision, I just re-forwarded him the decision, that we had, and, you know, I did let them know that, you know.
that's fine. So they're in compliance with condition 4. I just don't know if anybody from the zoning board actually submitted comments to planning, that's all.
I did.
really see. Okay. Never saw it. I was gone. I was halfway around the world, I guess.
Do we have any other questions from the board?
Ready for a motion?
Do you have it?
Are we ready? Are we ready?
Yes.
Okay, so, I was here and I was, one who voted in favor of the original request, so I'm going to propose this motion. I move that the board find pursuant to Mass General Law 40A, Section 9, lapse of special permit, that the applicant has shown good cause by working both informally and formally with various town offices, and is now in hearings with the Conservation Commission and site plan approval with the planning board, and that the permit, ZBA file number 13-10, be extended for the mini golf course, extended for the mini golf use for 2 years from May 14th, 2015, when the permit is due to expire. Do I read the lapse? Do I read the lapse?
So, to extend it for 2 years from May 14th, 2015, when the permit is due to expire.
No,
No?
not yet.
Did I misread, read that?
No, no,
Oh, don't
fine.
read this. That's what I
Yes.
read, or what I
Okay.
intended to
No,
read.
2
You're
years,
fine.
I
okay.
don't know what I
That's
read.
what
I meant to read that.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to Howard, he said, a year, I asked him about time, well, how do you think this is,
This is to advise.
you know, you could change something, they gotta come back with, you know.
Thank you.
So,
I didn't see it.
Is there a second?
Second.
And we can just do, all those in favor,
yeah, you don't need a roll call.
or board
vote.
discussion?
Not that there is
Nothing?
any
Yeah.
for discussion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Motion passes.
Now, do I read the?
Question.
Yeah, you might want to advise them of this.
Oh.
Question, I haven't done one of these.
So I just need to read this little
Oh,
blurb.
sorry, yes.
The lapse of the special permit, per MGL 40A, Section 9, special permits granted shall lapse within a specified period of time, not more than 2 years, which shall not include such time required to pursue or await the determination of an appeal referred to in section 17. If substantial use thereof has not sooner commenced, except for good cause, or in the case of permit for construction, if construction has not begun by such date, except for good cause. So, sounded funny.
That's what we put
Yep.
at the end
Okay.
of, I just
Yep.
threw that on there, that's what we put at the end of all
We
the.
just found good cause.
Yeah.
Question for,
Mhm.
since it's not technically a hearing, do we have to write a formal decision?
It's still a determination made by the board, and I would expect you would want something in writing, evincing the board's, vote, particularly something that you could record.
Okay.
So, I would recommend that.
Okay,
A written finding by the board.
Thank you.
Do you want this, Patty?
And they'll have that when, Patty? When's the expiration date? Sorry.
May
Of May
14th.
14th, so we have 14 days to get whatever decisions we do tonight. So that'll be May 19th, so we gotta,
So
we
that-
have to get the.
That letter would be
Well,
dated,
you made the
that would be dated today.
determination
and-
before May 14th, does the decision have to be written before the permit expires?
It's the better practice, certainly, to get
so
the decision
I'll do
out
this
time
tomorrow
after the
and-
board's vote.
You might have to go and sign twice.
That's fine.
Unless we can get everybody there in 1 or 2 days at the station. You can send me a little quick thing I signed,
Why would we have to sign
like
twice?
Sean.
Something
Sean
else. She's
did.
meaning, she means
Meaning
this
that
one
she can get
plus
this one
other.
out right
other-
away, but the other one might.
You have to
Oh,
come back and
oh,
do
I
something
understand
else.
the other
Yeah,
yeah,
the other
okay,
hearing
That's fine, that's fine,
may
I'll sign
take-
it. Mm-hmm.
There's
I
2
could-
other hearings that
Got
are
it, I
seen to
understand
me.
what you're saying.
Saying is the written finding should be completed
Okay.
before the 14th.
So
And
what
the
I'll
others
do
may not be
is,
done by then.
um,
Yeah.
Okay.
did you
got
read
it.
14 days?
Yep.
Okay.
Did I? I read the bottom. Was
Yeah.
that the 14 days? Yeah.
So I have 14 days to file a decision with the town clerk. We're gonna do it sooner because of the date, obviously, so
Right.
I'll let you know when that's ready, and I'll give you, instructions for the registry.
Okay,
I'll contact you.
thank you
Thank
very
you very
much.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, good luck.
Good luck,
Thank you.
guys.
Thanks.
We'll get them. I know where they can get some dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs. That's why you were afraid of dinosaurs.
No, that wasn't, afraid of everything else that might pop up that we didn't think of.
Not necessarily the orange dinosaur that we talked about.
I might get a purple one, you never know.
All right.
Oh.
We're still on new business other.
Okay,
Oh, right.
nothing under other correspondence is the building inspector's, denial dated March 26, 2015 for 444 North Street. That is this, can you pass those down? Dave, you have yours.
Yes, I do.
I will mail Paul to him. That
Oh,
is
this is this one.
for
okay.
an accessory apartment for June 2nd. The hearing is June 2nd at 7:30.
So,
It will be, so it's for an accessory apartment at 444 North. It's an addition for the accessory apartment, so it's not in the existing home, his plans are nice, actually. It's keeping the single-family characteristics and.
We'll need to see plans anyways.
Yeah, you have them in the packet.
All right.
This is 44 North you're talking about?
Yes.
444 North?
444 North. So that's, I think that's the only, and
Yeah, I see
then,
accessory
Wells Ave.
yes, Wells Ave, so what happened with this, we originally had a denial for this before, and they did not file with us within the 30 days. So she refiled with the building inspector, and so I've met with her, and she's, refining our plans. It's also an accessory apartment, and, I'm be meeting with her next week. So that's not on for June yet. Under general correspondence is a application distribution list from the planning board. It's an OSRD for if you're on 97 Lower Bailey Lane, you're going to Groveland, you know that Lower Bailey Lane. When you go, if you go down there and then, have you ever seen that little piece of Bailey Lane? There's some land that abuts those homes. And on the other side, there's a ravine that is on the end of, so there's Upper Bailey and then there's a ravine. The Conservation Commission bought that land. Then when you come in the other side of Bailey, you hit part of that, but there's a piece of land in there and I guess it's not conservation's. I thought the whole thing was conservation's, but I guess it's not, so,
Where's the, I don't know what's missing the.
it's just, Howard's looking for comments on it by May 14th.
But we don't have anything. Is it just one plan?
I have the whole, oh, it's on my desk. I
Okay.
have the entire plan if you want me to go get it, I can.
Do they have a PDF of it?
I'm waiting for Howard to send me that, actually, he should have that by now, so I can ask him.
I always prefer a PDF, but, if you could get us that would be great.
Of Bailey OSRD. And OSRD is just open space open space, residential development. Okay, I'll get that to you guys. And then we were gonna have, a discussion, Gina had me put the timing discussion as far as signing the decisions on the agenda.
Do you want me to say? Okay, so, just a couple of things that we all have to remember is that we're all volunteers and that we should respect each other's time. And in that same respect, we should respect Patty's time. So when she sends out an email telling us to go sign, if we could just let her know, that we've signed and do it in a timely manner. That way Patty doesn't have to run up there and see. And sometimes what I do, and I don't know if this helps you, but when
I'm either emailing or sending a quick text on a Saturday, and then all it takes is when you're there, if you can just shoot me something that it's signed, that's it.
And
So-
sometimes when I do it, if I see that 3 people have signed, I'll say the only one left is, I'm just saying Jeff for
Me.
now,
Yeah,
but
and
you know
then
what
I
I
end
mean?
up-
It could be
and then I end
anybody.
up-
Yeah, but
Jeff.
that way that she can call that one person or 2 people, and sometimes I've text, hey, get over here, type of
It's
thing, so.
just like this, like the Noonans I can do tomorrow, and, the Carlton, if that goes well and it's very simple, I can probably have them, I usually have those simple ones done and at the station by Thursday afternoon, and I try and, if I can get it by Monday,
Right.
that's a bunch of time, so.
And that should be plenty of time. I know I sometimes forget and have to get
I
the
know.
second text too,
And
but.
I send out a reminder, but I'm not getting everybody back saying I signed it, and it's sitting there, and to go back and forth to the police station is just, all weekend is kinda crazy.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about that?
And I don't know if you guys, did anybody go to town meeting last night, just for informational, real quick?
Yep,
How'd it
So-
go?
The
great.
Would you like to?
affordable accessory apartment didn't pass, I heard, I didn't go. I
Correct.
was-
Not
And
pass.
Alan.
Not pass?
Did not pass.
Did not pass. And Mr. Olson's, the
That
what
was
they
the
did is
selectmen's warrant was, withdrawn, I believe.
passed over.
Passed over, thank you.
Yeah, and I talked to Howard today about that, and he said they might come in with I've never heard of a friendly 40B. We had back in 2001 free 40Bs, but they said something about maybe doing a friendly 40B.
Unfriendly before? I don't
That's
know.
why it's
Well, one
passed
is where they
over.
come in,
So-
if we haven't met our local needs, they would
Certain-
come in and
Our guru
get
right
forced on
here.
us. The other is that it's in the town's best interest and perhaps we would wanna work with somebody to
Yeah, I
develop
mean, if a
one. That's the only
40B,
difference.
even if a regular
Perhaps.
40B, as I understand it, the last time I talked to DHCD, if a regular 40B comes in, you can't turn them away, you just don't have to approve it, but if I'm thinking a friendly 40B is something that the selectmen would put forward or something like that, that's the only thing I have to talk to Elaine.
It's a new one on me.
Don Schmidt's gone at DHCD, I don't have my.
We'll be buying new.
Council, have you heard of a friendly 40B?
I've heard of a lot of terms in the context of 40B.
Yeah, his face went.
Typically, in my experience, when someone is referring to a friendly 40B, it's a parcel of land that could see a different kind of development that isn't necessarily something that the town would be interested in, and perhaps, despite some people's feelings about 40Bs, it may be a good opportunity because it may come along with certain infrastructure improvements or other things that the town might be interested in.
Gotcha.
And it also might be one, in some cases, that pushes a town to the threshold for 40B compliance, and then maybe the next one that comes along is something that the town doesn't have to necessarily address. So I've heard it used in a number of different contexts.
I was under the impression that after Longview, we met our obligations for 40B.
We have for now.
Well,
That changes.
We have for now.
Right.
but you know what
A
happened?
lot of development going on.
What happened?
Depending on population.
Harry.
Probably.
Right.
What
A
happened?
I think
factors,
Harry can speak.
What happened too
for
is
it.
West Street, because there was no building permits issued on West Street, the 40B that Chid's Junkyard. So that came off, am I correct?
4 came off,
4 units came off the HSI.
the subsidized housing inventory, the SHI dropped by 4, but we're still at, even at this point, 11.7. And we have a housing production plan that has been accepted by DHCD.
Want to explain what a
Yeah, I was
housing
just gonna
production
say,
plan
can
is?
you explain that? We all kind of went blank.
With respect to appeals.
It's not on the agenda for today.
Okay.
We can have an entire 40B conversation another night,
All right.
Madam Chair.
Another level of insulation for the town.
Okay.
Right.
That's it, and our next meeting is June 2nd.
Okay. So,
I move that we close the business meeting for May 5th.
Second?
Looking over there for the
all
date.
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Motion passes. I know, I had a hard time with the date too.
I couldn't find it on.
Do we want a 5-minute recess before we go into the first hearing? Or do you wanna just go?
I'm okay to go.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Is Carlton Drive here?
Hi, Barry.
Oh,
How you doing?
Right.
talked to you not too long ago. This is the building next door to the one we were talking about before.
Sorry.
This is Donna Ritchie. Who is it? Who
Hi,
is
how are you?
tenants?
Donna, D-O-N-N-A-R-I-C-C-I.
Are you, actually,
Yes.
what's your title? Kind of, you are the owner, just the owner?
Oh, no.
This is,
I gave you the legal ad.
You.
David, would you like to read the legal ad for me, please?
This is a legal ad, attention Georgetown Record. Public hearing will be held on May 5th, 2015 at 7:30 PM at the Georgetown Town Hall, 3rd floor meeting room for an application filed by Barry M. Enos of Ipswich and John Enos of Danvers, Mass., owners and trustees of B&R Realty, Georgetown, Mass., for the property located at 16 Carlton Drive, Georgetown, Mass., assessors map 15, lots 45 and 68 in the IB zone. The applicant owner requires a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals to operate an archery studio for private educational use, which requires a special permit in the Industrial B District under the Georgetown Bylaws, Chapter 2, under use schedule, and Chapter 165-9, 78, and 79, and pursuant to MGL Chapter 40A, Section 9 of the State Code, and this is under ZBA file number 15-09.
Just like to introduce the members. We have David Kapnis, we have Attorney Winter, who's sitting with us tonight, Sean Dean, Sharon Freeman, Jeff Moore, and I'm Gina Tebow.
Hi.
So if you would like to give us your presentation.
Okay, this is the building at 16 Carlton Drive, and the second floor closest to East Main Street is an area that's about 160 feet long. It has a high ceiling, open span of about 39 feet. And we're developing that according to this plan, which is center entrance stairway coming up. There'll be two rooms that, actually three rooms that she will not occupy. But we're adding the two bathrooms, small office for her. And that wall is a wall that has 6 Lexan windows in it that are about 3 foot high, 10 foot long. So they can observe. This wall down here is, as the plan shows, it's double sheetrock, 3/4 inch MDF, 3/4 inch plywood, and then the target sit in front of that. The theory is that wall should never even be hit with an arrow. But that's, you know, you build it according to something may happen. The traffic flow will come in basically the front door. This door, the emergency exit will be, you won't be able to enter that way. And
If I put this up here, would that cover anything?
no, it's fine.
Sorry, I forgot.
The lot itself, that's the shape of the building. This is an older plan, but it was on record. And there's 57 parking spaces on the left. And there's lighting on both ends, but parking will take place on the right and the left, both to come down to the center entrance. The other businesses are both manufacturing, but none of those come out the front door. In other words, they have shipping out the back door. There really shouldn't be any intermingling. Everything in there is being completely redone. The building inspector's been in a number of times. Obviously, he'll be in at the end as well. So, as far as traffic, that road is, I mean, we're the last thing on the street, and there's a cul-de-sac. The only thing that's down there is the police once in a while when they come down and turn around. We get no daily traffic. We do get employees working in the other parts of the business, but it's a very quiet area. If you wanna go through the plan, this is the plan that's up on the wall now, the first one. Then there's one showing all the adjoining properties, which is on record, showing the building. And then this one is basically a picture of the front of the building. It's 320 feet long, 160 feet to the side, and we're gonna be occupying those windows up on the second floor that you see.
The ones you've circled, yep.
Yeah.
Tell me, where's the karate studio in relation to this? Just on the
Next door
opposite,
building. This is number 16 and number 4.
separate building.
Separate building.
Yeah, that was, 4,
One more.
that was 4 Carlton Drive. We did,
Oh, it's in here?
a while back.
Oh, I
Kinda
was
is-
thinking this was,
Same thing, but in one of his other buildings.
Right.
all right.
Different building.
Okay.
I think you
Apologies.
have, if you have this drawing, which is all the property,
Yeah,
It's
4
such a,
Carlton Drive is right here, that's where the karate studio is.
Okay.
it's such a big parcel and these buildings look so little on it.
Well, those buildings are now gone, there's a big building there.
Okay.
That's what they were back in 1980 something.
okay. My apologies. I was thinking this was the
That's
same
all right.
structure as
Me
the,
too.
I was trying to figure out what side of the building you were using for one versus the other, so, okay.
So right now
I'm
on
with
the
you.
upstairs, the other half of it, there's nothing in there right now. That used to be the offices for BME Engineering, which was sold in 2007,
So as we're looking at this plan, it's what would be off the page to the right
would be the other
is
half.
what you're talking about is empty.
Right.
It's the second floor you're referring to.
That's correct.
Okay.
This is all on the second floor.
So as far as patrons coming in, as far as the flow of people come in the front door, up the main stairway there, and to the
Yes,
left?
and to the left.
Okay.
And on the plan of the side of the building, is the main entrance that 20-foot? Looks like there's a,
The side view,
yeah, clear story.
I'm not sure which plan, this plan?
Yes, the middle 20 feet, is that the main entrance?
That's the main entrance, it's a glass,
Okay, clear, like
Yeah.
clear story, up.
yeah.
And
And you
how,
said-
oh, go ahead, go ahead.
And the other side of it's empty right now?
Right now it's empty. That used to be the offices when BME Engineering manufactured equipment down there.
So what's the parking requirement for your proposed use? How many spaces?
Well,
Do you
I'm
need-
not,
I don't know what your occupancy is for this.
there's a tenant down on this side, lower. They have, right now they have about 12 cars, 12 employees. There's a tenant over here that has about 9 employees. And over here there's 57 spaces. And I know we want this ahead of time, but on the right-hand side, in this little corner, we're gonna add 39 more spaces. That's been graded, it's been graded for years. Just a matter of getting lines on the ground and whatever. At one time, this building on this site with this parking had 103 employees. So there'll be far less than that now. There'll be the 2 manufacturing businesses, and there'll be the archery on intermittent. It's on every day, all day. What are your hours?
At this point, we're looking at Thursday through Sunday with a 3 to 9, noon to 9, 9 to 5, noon to 5 kind of thing. And then Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday by appointment if we get, say, a special party or something like that. But for the most part, it should be Thursday through Sunday.
Do you have an idea on, like, what the max capacity would be for classes?
Sure. So we have 11 lanes, and the way that it will work is that you come in and you would either rent out a lane for an hour and shoot, or if I have a class, I will have typically 8 people in the class, and then I leave 3 lanes open if somebody wants to come in off the street to shoot. So in theory, we're looking at maximum would be 11 shooters on average, and then maybe a mother or a father, or somebody might come, but most likely they would come together. So I'd imagine in terms of if parking is what you're talking about, on any given day, I can't imagine there'd be more than 11 cars plus myself and maybe 2 of my instructors.
Sounds like no matter how many people came, you're not gonna exceed what you have for parking.
Yeah.
We will have parties, for example, we'll have the open house, and the open house may bring in larger numbers for that specific time period, those kinds of things. And if I have an event, I might have up to about 20 people. I don't really want to have more than 20 people with bows and arrows in their possession at any one point. So it's not gonna get that big.
Sounds good.
And do you rent bows and arrows?
No, they're bought.
Okay.
So we are a USA Archery Junior Olympic Archery Development Program. So USA Archery is the national program in the country. And in fact, this summer we would be doing a summer camp, a Saturday and Sunday. Maximum number of students for that would be 17. And that's sponsored in many ways by USA Archery. They'll fund me a little bit to help me run that. So I am a level 3 coach. There are 5 levels in the USA Archery system. I have 3 level 2 instructors. I have 1 level 1 instructor. And we will, at this point, we just bought 20 bows, 120 arrows, and all of the accoutrements that go with it. And so that equipment will be in there. I have completed the liability insurance. I have gone through a man who owns an archery range in the Midwest. He's been doing insurance for over 20 years and archery for longer than that. And so Barry and I have been back and forth, and the insurance will go into effect this week, May 9th. I wanted to set it up well before we were open, just to be on the safe side.
On your question, I think you asked the bows and arrows will be available for rental if people don't have them, or they can bring their own.
Right, so you're buying them, but if I wanted to go, I could rent.
So what would happen actually is if you came in off the street with no equipment whatsoever, for a fee, I will make sure that you understand the safety rules, number one, and then I will show you how to shoot basics, or one of my instructors will. And then the range will be monitored at all times. So it's not like somebody's gonna kind of walk in and say, oh, let me rent that piece of equipment and I'm gonna stand here and shoot goodbye to you. It's us saying, this is the right equipment for you, based on all of the factors that go into determining that. But also, somebody could bring their own equipment. We are doing it just for bare bow, so recurve and longbow, which are two specific types. A compound bow, you may know, it's got the cams and the double, pulleys and all of that. It's much more of a hunter's bow. We're making a choice not to have that at this range for several reasons. So we will just be having bare bow and longbow at this point.
The monitoring, is that going to be done physically, or is that gonna be done electronically?
Always physical. Yeah, we have set it up in such a way that the small office that I have, I did ask Barry to put in 2 very large windows. So if for any reason I have to be in the office, I can see out onto the range. And then, as I said, I have 4 instructors that will be available intermittently. So I would never, walk out for a cup of coffee, for example, and leave people alone in the range unless they were a certified instructor.
Can you tell me again the hours?
So we're looking at this point, I have listed as Thursday, 3 to 9,
3 to 9,
Friday, noon to 9,
12 to 9.
Saturday, 9 to 5,
Okay.
Sunday, noon to 5.
Uh-huh.
Now, on top of that, though, I will be doing some private parties. I already have one scheduled so like at 5 o'clock on Friday, when the range officially closes, that's when girls' night out happens, and, 20 women come in, and for an hour and a half to 2 hours, we'll have some kind of event.
Sorry, so Friday's 12 to
12
5.
to 9,
12 to 9,
yes.
and the girls' night's out.
Oh,
Is
so
it,
I meant
is
to
it
say
9?
Saturday.
Oh, Saturday.
So in
Okay,
other words,
got it,
like, we
got
could
it.
be
Yeah, yeah,
officially
yeah.
closed,
Yep. No, I
but
understand.
we
But
would,
open.
Okay.
right, and
All
then,
yeah.
again, a lot of corporate places would be looking, like, team building kinds of events.
Yep.
So if those need to happen on other days, I'm in Boston, I'm a clinical psychologist in private practice in Boston, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
I see.
So for the most part, I won't be there, and at least early on, we won't be open on those days because I'm busy doing this other thing.
Clarifying one thing for me, because I'm not real familiar with it, but on a scale of 1 to 5, who is the most qualified instructor?
At our
I know
range.
you're in the middle, because you're a 3.
Actually, to give you the statistics on this, in all of New England, there are levels 3, 4, and 5. There's about 50 of us. Only 8 of us are women. There's very few 5s in the country. 5 is really, you're on the Olympic.
5's the Top Gun.
You
Okay.
don't get any higher.
That's what I wanted
than
to
that.
clarify.
Yes.
Just want to know which
Most of
which
us-
end was
One
more
higher,
qualified. 5 is more
Oh, I get you,
qualified.
I get you now.
Yeah,
New
got
Hampshire
it.
has 3 4s, for example. There's not, the 3 is pretty much where most of the ranges are, level 3 where I am, and that's considered a coach, so,
Thanks.
sure.
When we were talking about a similar use in the other building, we were talking about, safety of people coming and going. You've got some businesses here, or the potential to certainly reinstitute some manufacturing and all of that in other parts of this building. Do you plan to delineate specific parking for the archery studio and sign it as such, so that we're not
Well, I
the
think
folks can get out of their cars and
my
use?
intention is, there's a lower level, and then there's an upper level over here. And what I would like to do is delineate the upper level to be for the second floor, being this, on this side, and this front row of the future 4 rows, also to be for the second floor. And we can post that with signs, things like that.
So the 57, oh no, wait, not all 57.
No, just the front row would be, I think there's about 14 spaces there. There's 14 spaces over here, so 28 spaces would be set aside for the archery.
Could we delineate that on a plan that we can include? So that we could sort of identify that these are the spaces that ought to be delineated for the second floor use?
Yeah.
Um,
Can I just mark it on these?
Yeah, well, maybe he could do it, because,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just maybe mark up one of these plans that we could
Sure.
include as an exhibit.
Probably this one, a bigger one. so you can see it.
The small one's fine, if I'm used.
And I did not do a markup sheet for this, so we have them.
We can
Mark
include it
these.
as a separate exhibit, though, we can
Yeah.
include it.
Well, we've gotta make them all an exhibit anyway.
Yeah.
So we use the marked up one of whatever A that is.
The idea being that you could have some mixed use here that ought to be delineated from a parking standpoint. There's gonna be some, potentially, looks like some overlap in hours between potential manufacturing or office use as well as this use, so. I gave away my plan, but where would, I'm wondering where if there was any trucks and so forth coming in,
Well,
trying to forget how they would,
this,
they'd come around to the right and
the
go
waste equipment
behind.
side, there is a driveway that comes right down here along this lot line. I'll show you where that is.
Okay, I'll let you finish.
Well, he's marking up the plan. Is anybody in the audience here for this hearing? Or are you all next?
Are you here for commentary? No?
She's with me.
Oh, okay. No, because if anybody is, I just need you to sign in, that's all.
There is a driveway that comes in here through a gate in this fence for the waste equipment pile. On this right side, there is also a driveway. It goes all the way around for fire department requirements. But it's going to be, right now there's a fence here with a gate. That's gonna be removed, we're gonna put a gate back here. Such that the waste equipment will be using this driveway. The, what he does makes Babbitt bearings, if anyone knows what that is. On this side, he gets very infrequent deliveries. Now, what I marked up was the front row spots here, and I don't know if it's really to put this on record, but that's what we're adding for spots. And he only has spots that'll fill about half of this back row. There's still, so without taking that out, there's 3 full rows of parking on this side. So what we may find is, yeah, we may have this marked, but a lot of people may park over here.
Right. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I was just wondering, you've got some loading docks in the back here, I assume. Maybe not in use now or occupied, but there's a potential for large vehicle traffic coming along
And again, that would be.
counterclockwise behind the
That would
building.
be coming out this driveway
He's gonna put a fence.
and
here
coming in
somewhere
this driveway.
by this guy.
So how would the trucks get to the back, I guess
This
is all.
way.
Right across here.
There's a driveway behind here. I
It's
guess.
a paved area.
There's a driveway that we don't see on the plan.
Right. Well, this plan is, it's old.
So it
Coming
comes up.
in this way, all right.
So,
I'm just wanting to know if truck traffic is gonna be diverted away from the parking spaces that you've just identified.
Yes,
Any
definitely
potential
will.
future truck traffic is gonna be going around the other way and not
That's correct.
have people crossing over when you
And
maybe
it's-
have deliveries coming and going in the middle of the
Space
day.
here between the building and the parking is, it's 37 feet, 38 feet. So if a vehicle does come down here, it's not like it's a tight spot.
And lastly, lighting.
Lighting on
Talk
both
about what-
ends, on timers, on photosensitive, that's up here and up here.
So from the parking area,
Both parking areas will have lights directly above them.
okay, along to the,
Yeah, where are they located? I missed that.
Right, there's a little black spot here, and a little black spot here, that's basically the lights that are mounted to the building.
sorry.
yeah.
Now, anyone from the right-hand parking lot also can come into the building through a side door, go up the stairs and walk down to this area too. They don't have to be outside in the street.
Any other questions?
Patty, exhibit,
Yes, which sheet are you on?
well, this one is
Okay,
marked
it's
up as
that one,
reserved.
but you're gonna mark that one in. Okay, give me that one. Is that the one you
And-
wrote
enter-
on?
Yeah, you want me to enter this as what, exhibit A?
Let's do A. Let's do ABC. There.
Is there anything else you wanna add?
You wanna add those others?
Do you have any questions?
And
You won't be selling equipment,
I could at some point.
is that?
I would have, all the proper, I actually have a sales number for other things, so.
Okay.
This one's
with-
marked
with,
up, so.
That's allowed here, right? In
you gotta read
industrial,
to mark them. Do you wanna do the other ones?
sorry. It's an IB district, right?
So I'm marking, I guess it's titled Alta ACM Land Title Survey
Yes.
as Exhibit A.
It's an IB.
I'm marking the plan of the land as Exhibit B. I'm marking the section of the view from outside, B and R Realty, as Exhibit C. And I'm marking the construction plan by O'Sullivan Architects, sheet number A2, as Exhibit D.
Any sales that might be done would be probably, let's say, a private transaction between her and the student, maybe a sales office, per se. for
There won't be a
public
retail office.
Right.
I think so, I just didn't want them to come back.
It's not a retail use.
Yeah, okay.
How many parking spaces did you just delineate? I'm sorry.
57 plus,
28?
Well, 28 for
oh,
the archery,
just delineated,
correct?
28.
The ones that you just marked up
Right,
on?
that's 28.
Okay, any board discussion?
I'm good.
Jeff is furiously writing here.
What is, hey, you took my plan, you didn't touch it.
Oh, I
The
gave
one that
them
was
away.
marked up, what did it say on there? Designated?
Reserved.
I think you wrote designated, right?
No, you wrote reserved. Did you write reserved for the parking?
I did on the page I sent back over.
That's identified.
Now, on the other one we did for the karate, we have two signs out there, reserved spaces between signs for international martial arts, and that works very well. We'll do the same.
Glad it worked well.
I know, it's nice that it actually worked.
So the hours, I would suggest are limited to Monday through Friday, noon to 9 PM. And Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 5. If you say you're not gonna be there Monday through Wednesday and we limit hours to Thursday and Friday, you can't go in
I
there.
think we wanna have them 5 days a week. certain hours,
I don't
during the
see any
weekend,
reason
so-
why Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, so should you choose, you couldn't operate between the hours of noon and 9.
I could,
But-
I could not. I'm sorry.
Could.
I'm
We're-
suggesting that the hours be limited to Monday through Friday, noon to 9 PM, and Saturday and Sunday, 9 AM to 5 PM.
And would that prohibit me from staying open later on a Friday? I mean, a
Or a
Saturday or
Saturday
Sunday?
for like a.
Or
private
earlier
event.
on a
Special
Monday.
events.
Because
Well,
if I have a
that's why
special
well,
event-
let's talk about the hours you need. I mean, this is what,
First of all, during the
I'm
weekdays,
just
Monday,
reiterating what you would
Monday
ask for, and
sometimes.
I've extended it to the entire
I I think
work
if there are special events going on, like with a corporation or whatever, they could come in and at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning. So if we limit noon to 9 during the week, it's gonna be,
So do 8 to
I
9.
don't think you're gonna see an operation that's gonna go that long, but
I don't think this particular use is gonna, in this area, in this building, is gonna be any kind of a nuisance outside of normal operating hours, so I don't,
Do we need
based,
to,
based on that,
include
what I'd like to suggest,
Yeah.
what's the earliest, 8?
I would like to be able to do an 8 o'clock in the morning if I could,
So 8,
especially
To
for corporate
9,
events. 8
Monday
AM
through
to 9
Friday.
PM,
and then how much that?
7 days a week.
Should you do 7 days a week,
That would be
8 AM
great.
to 9 PM?
if you could do that, that would be great.
That would make more sense doing the special events, because now
Yeah.
you're gonna hinder yourself
Yeah.
saying, all right, I'm shut down at 5 o'clock on Saturday, where no.
Late, 9?
9? You said 9 PM?
Yes, 9 PM
I
will
don't,
be fine.
yeah.
So 9 to 9 would cover,
8 to 9.
8 to 9.
8 to 9.
Cover it.
8 to 9 would cover
Makes sense.
camps and holidays.
And I don't think you're gonna
and-
see that
Yes.
on a
Private
regular
parties
basis,
and-
but it may happen occasionally,
Yeah.
Well, we
That's what I
wanna
would
make
do.
sure you don't have to come back and say,
you know.
I
I don't wanna
appreciate
come
that.
back.
we need that
No
extra
offense.
hour.
They need the flexibility for the weekends.
Yes. Any questions?
I need some,
On board?
WD-40 for my chair.
Really?
It's on my desk.
And I'll come in before you and I'll swap chairs.
If that was squeaking last meeting I was here.
Maybe it's me. I'm only trying not
Anybody
to
else got
die.
anything?
I don't have any squeaks.
When do you expect to open?
We are having a grand opening on May 30th,
Oh.
from noon to 3
That'll be
PM.
exhibit 10.
So anybody
Yes,
wants to
I
come
marked it
shooting,
down.
please join us. We'll have free demonstrations, and anybody who wants to shoot, we'll get you outfitted, and,
That's cool.
yeah, it'll be great.
Katniss.
She did make things take off, didn't she?
I think so.
Yeah.
I have some flyers if you'd like, I can leave some for you, if you would like, so you have the information.
Well, before we go too far, we should probably have a motion, huh?
Yeah, well, there was that.
Getting ahead of yourselves. Sorry about
Yeah.
3 minutes.
Just,
All
so there was no new correspondence.
Yep.
And
And
no
no,
audience.
no audience.
Thanks.
All right, if nobody has anything further, I would like to move that the board grant to the owners of 16 Carlton Drive, Barry M. Enos of Ipswich, Mass., and John Enos of Danvers, Mass., trustees of B&R Realty, Georgetown, Mass., for the property located at 16 Carlton Drive, Georgetown, Massachusetts, Assessors Map 15, Lot 45 and 68, a special permit to operate an archery studio, which is a private educational use in the Industrial B Zone pursuant to Georgetown Bylaws, Chapter 165-9, 78 and 79, Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 9 of the State Code, with the following conditions. The hours of operation shall be limited to 8 AM to 9 PM, 7 days a week. The 28 parking spaces on the front side of the property shall be reserved and designated with signage for the archery school's use. Parking spaces are identified on Exhibit A. That appropriate outdoor lighting shall be maintained along the parking area and on the front of the building, and that the special permit shall expire if the archery tenant vacates the premises. I further move that the board find the application meets the Georgetown zoning bylaw, Chapter 165-79, A through D, specifically that the application is desirable to the public convenience or welfare, will not overload any public water or municipal services so as to unduly subject any areas to hazards affecting health, safety, or the general welfare, will not impair the integrity or character of the district or adjoining districts, will not cause an excess of that particular use which could be detrimental to the character of the neighborhood.
Second, anybody? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Discussion.
Oh, for discussion? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion passes.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you very much.
I'd like to state that there's a 20-day appeal period following.
Yep.
The 14 days, clerk has to file a written decision with the town clerk. A person who exercises rights under an appealed special permit variance does so at risk. So 20 days, I think should be all set for your opening. Today is the 5th.
Well, there's 14 days that we have
Oh.
to write and create the decision and then get it stamped by the town clerk. That date stamped by the town clerk, that starts the 20-day clock. So then it's 20 days from after the 14 days. unless we get it done before the 14 days, it'll be a little sooner.
But we can operate under our risk that if it's repealed.
Yes. It's at your own risk.
I have no problem with that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
Thank you.
Can I have a
Thank
motion
you.
for the hearing?
so move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Second.
Hearing's closed.
Thank you.
Second.
Who seconded that?
Somebody said I-
Second.
David seconded. Seconded.
Oh, second.
Seconded.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Jeff?
Yeah, I got it, hang on,
Yeah,
I'm
thanks.
working on it.
Cause I, started writing on it, but
Oh, I got it for you, hang on.
Now you know how to find me when you're ready?
I know how to find you, I know where you live,
Getting quite the
Barry.
pile back.
Just
So,
leave the public
within the
hearing
14
portion
days, I'll
open.
give you a call.
Okay.
And I'll give you the registry instructions.
Deliberations of the hearing.
We closed the public. Wait, what?
I didn't hear a vote to close the hearing until after the vote was taken.
Yeah,
So
we
some
don't
boards have a
ever
practice of.
If anybody's here for Lane Commission,
close
Close
and then go to board
and then go
discussion.
into discussion so
Yeah.
that nobody can stand up and say, oh, we're in one thing, and then start the whole process all over.
Huh.
But it
We
also
should do
prevents,
that.
well, it depends on the case, 'cause sometimes you don't want it.
Right. Yeah, we don't, we usually,
Okay, just curious.
but I can see where it could help.
In some
In
cases.
her, yeah, I guess in others. Okay.
one sec. Notes. God, it's freezing up here and it's 90 downstairs. Okay. Jeff, can you?
Do we have to read the legal ad again? We don't, 'cause
New
it's
public hearing though.
Can we just take
a 5 minute?
yeah,
Is that
2
a,
minutes, couple minutes?
can we have a 2-minute recess?
Chris, there he goes.
We just have to wait.
Waiting for them.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, everybody. It is May 5th at 8:18, and we are opening the continued hearing. Actually, we're not opening it. We're just continuing the hearing for 3 Farm Lane. I'd like to say right from the beginning that without waiving our rights to the timeliness of the appeal, I'd like to ask the board if we'd like to consider the appeal on its merits. If everybody's willing to do that, we'll move forward.
Yeah.
I am.
Okay. Then we are gonna move forward. We're not gonna talk about the timeliness. We don't need to at this point, but we're still gonna keep it in our pocket,
Okay,
okay?
all right.
So the first job, as the ZBA, our first job is to look at the zoning violations set forth by the building inspector. And I think he had his letter. I put this somewhere now. And I think I just want you to go through, and explain where you're at with the,
Compliance?
the compliance with the ones that he outlines. I think he outlines them a couple different times. It's the noise and the March 3rd issue, the site plan conditions on the June 17th letter. I think you have spoken to a couple of them, but if you could just,
I'll address the noise issue briefly, just to say, we're not prepared to argue that tonight, just to say that it was a noise complaint by the abutter that caused John to reopen the site plan review issue. As far as I know, there's no cease and desist on the noise issue. I've explained to John my position that the definition of light industry, that noise be confined to the premises without any decibel qualification, is not enforceable by a court, and that's our position on that. So I really don't have anything to say about the noise, except that the issue before you, the site plan issue, is secondary. It wasn't, I want it clear, John did not go looking through site plans from 15 years ago. When he was investigating the noise complaint, he came across what he thought was a inconsistency in site plan approval and lack of an as-built plan, and we do have an as-built plan to submit. So, John isn't here, so I'll say what I said the last time, it's a friendly appeal. He and I went back and forth on this, and my client went back and forth on this with him. They've made some improvements. And again, by way of introduction, I have Jack Klimp with me, who is a vice president of the company based in Georgetown. Richard Brescia, the vice president from the headquarters in Maine, is unable to make it tonight. He's out of state. I can go through my argument why I think we shouldn't have to go back for site plan approval.
I don't think you need to argue that. I think what we want to determine here is where you're in violation and what the ZBA can do to help you come in compliance.
All right, we're saying we're not in violation. We're saying we were issued an occupancy permit by Charles Brett on August 21st, 2000, which my client should have been allowed to rely on without having to go back and investigate records from 15 years ago when they bought the property in 2012. So we're arguing under 40A Section 7, as I put in my application, the 6 and 10 year statutes of limitation. We're well beyond that. I can submit, I think you have this, but just for the record, I'd like to submit this memorandum from the town planner dated December 4th, 2000.
Was this, let me, just a question. Was the
This was
packet-
in my this was not in my application.
Was it in the packet that you?
No,
Okay.
no. So this is,
Okay, so,
I was going to submit it last time, so.
okay, so this will be, I'm just gonna write on, if you wanna mark on that sheet.
That should be enough copies.
Here, pass me. I'm just gonna put this. Yep. This is T.
I'm holding on, and if there aren't enough, I'll give mine up.
Hold on 1 second.
Thank you. That's all right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, yeah.
Take that back, Gina. Just added that too.
And as long as we're marking that, with that, I'd like to submit what's called an interim as-built plan dated January 2001.
That
You
is.
have that?
Yes, that is the, hold on, 1 second.
I did not submit that with my application.
No, but that was part of what they asked to see from John.
All right, so can we
So
just have
we-
that marked as an exhibit?
Yes,
I
Wait a
think it
minute.
already is. Is
Make
that
sure
the
it is.
1229?
What's the date, Mitch?
This is dated January 8th, 2001.
Oh,
It's an interim as-built plan by.
1/8/2001.
It's Exhibit N.
Yep.
You
we
have it?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Yes, we have that.
So our argument is that the planner at the time, Kathleen Bradley Caldwell, December 4th, 2000, which was less than 4 months after the occupancy permit, clearly knew about the need for an as-built plan. And it was submitted 1 month later, on January 8th, 2001. It was called interim because, as you recall from the decision, there were 4 phases. Phases 1 and 2 were completed. 3 and 4 were permitted but never allowed,
Completed.
never constructed. And maybe Jack can just give a little, since he was an employee, he's our link here. If it wasn't for Jack, we'd have no idea what happened 15 years ago. But fortunately or unfortunately, Jack had worked for Foster, so he does have some knowledge to the extent of his memory as to what happened 15 years ago, as to why they did not go forward with phases 3 and 4, which I think is relevant. I don't want to, and I don't intend to, analyze the whole site plan process. I guess the board's certainly welcome to do that, but that's not part of my presentation. My presentation is simply a common sense argument that 15 years, 20 years, 30 years after a site plan approval, any aggrieved abutter, anybody could go through a file and say, that doesn't quite look what's there now, you gotta go back to the planning board. So that's our argument, but why don't you explain why 3 and 4 weren't done?
Yeah, I was with L.B. Foster at the time, and we bought the business in the fall of 1997. And at the time, we were doing at that facility, we were doing a lot of work on the Big Dig. And so shortly after we purchased the facility, we went into the process of doing a site plan development, a capital expansion program. And we knew it took some time to get through the approval process, so we said, well, let's do this in one shot. Where do we think we would max out in terms of space? And we laid that out, and then we broke that into 4 phases. We pretty much immediately went into phase 1, which was a 10,000 square foot addition at the north end of the property, and then right at the end of that, we put on phase 2, which was a 5,000 square foot. And we completed that in early 2000, and took us a while to kind of grow into that additional space. And by the time we would have looked at growing further, now we're probably into 2002, 2003, and the Big Dig was still going pretty good, but it was beyond the peak, and we didn't see, at least to support the Big Dig, that we necessarily needed that additional square feet. So we kind of put that on hold, and really ultimately we never looked back from that. And that's pretty much it.
Was part of 3 and 4, did that involve the screening? And did that involve any expansion as far as storage in the yard?
To the best of my recollection, all the screening was done when we did phases 1 and 2. All of the storage stuff was done when we did phases 1 and 2. And I'm sorry, there's one part of your question I don't think I was
Your
responsive.
position, I think what you just said, your position now, you're telling us, the board, that the screening was completed as far as phase 1 and 2?
Yeah, when we were done with phase 1 and 2, my recollection would be that we had done all of the screening that was on the plan. I'd have to look at that a little closer before I'd want to put my hand on the Bible, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that that's the case.
Yeah, what I looked at, there seems to be, where there was supposed to be some additional trees planted, things of that nature that currently do not exist, but they were part of phases.
Now, I was gone for a period of years from 2008 to 2012, but, boy, I'm pretty confident that we planted all the trees. Now, when we wound up putting a fence at I guess that would be the south end of the property, it's possible that resulted in taking some trees down, but they would have been trees that we would have just planted. But, boy, you know what, I don't know.
I mean, I will add that as part of the noise mitigation effort, that is really the root of the problem. In addition to installing broadband alarms on the lift trucks to try to cut down on the noise, they planted last fall maybe 30 trees along the to create a little more of a buffer than existed. Again, we're not prepared to argue, I guess the board can argue, but whether the plan, whether what's there now is different or not. We're saying doesn't matter. We shouldn't be required 15 years after the fact to go back to the planning board with a totally new planning board and try to revisit this issue with a company that didn't own it at the time. And that why have an occupancy permit that says phases 1 and 2, 2 manufacturing buildings, and the building inspector signs off for it.
Okay, Attorney Corona,
Yes.
can I stop you?
Yes.
We're not telling you you have to go back to site plan approval. We're telling you you need to be in compliance with the zoning bylaws today. Right now, you're not in the zoning bylaw, you're not in compliance with
Why
the
not?
zoning bylaws.
Why not?
Because you are, first of all, of the noise transmission.
We're not here for that, though.
Well, I think you are. Maybe there's a fundamental disagreement here, but to be a good business in this town, you're here for the noise. And this isn't gonna proceed further. I can probably guarantee it, unless you're gonna do something to mitigate the noise.
We have tried to mitigate the noise.
Okay.
It's an unenforceable statute, it's an unenforceable bylaw, in our opinion.
Okay, so the issues that I see,
I would challenge the building inspector to find any business in town that can contain all its noise to the premises.
I'm not telling you to contain all of your noise to the premises, but you need to be reasonable.
Okay, and we think we are.
Okay, so are you done with your summary, I guess, because I would like to open it up to the audience if you're done with
Yeah,
your
I'd like to
presentation.
hear what the audience has to say. I'll reserve the rest of my argument, but,
Okay.
I mean, that's essentially,
Okay, so I do have some letters here. I don't know if there's anybody in the audience that I have their letter that they'd prefer to read themselves.
I'm Jennifer Schultz, and
Okay.
I would prefer to read mine.
Okay.
If it is possible, also my neighbor, Paul Rice, you have his letter too. He's ill tonight. He did contact me and asked me if possible if I could read his letter, if that's allowed.
Okay, so if you could just step up and, if you haven't signed in already, just sign in. Okay, you have. And then you can read those two letters. Oh, and if you could just give us your name and address for the record, and then when you read Paul's, do the same.
I just got it. 1 second.
Am I going?
The,
So some of these might be new and some of them might be,
the one that I just got today is the last one.
so I have Jennifer's here,
Yeah,
and Paul Rice, yep.
yep. That was from last hearing. You don't have a copy of that? Is that what you?
No, she has it.
No, Mitch was asking.
Oh,
Well, we don't, until we. What address is Paul Rice? Paul Rice is 137 Jewett Street.
I'll
Just
do
read
that.
'em in.
See what she's gotta say, and then pull out
go ahead.
I'll read Paul's letter first, if that's okay.
Okay.
Dear Zoning Board of Appeals members, this letter is in regards to Chimbro's appeal of submission of a site plan modification. I have lived at 137 Jewett Street since 1970. It was a peaceful neighborhood for many years until Georgetown Ironworks was located there under questionable circumstances. Then the noise began. I initially complained to the building inspector and the Board of Health with no results. No one would do anything. Many years have gone by since then. I am now 68 years old and sick and tired of being subjected to sudden, literally heart-stopping noises that produce enough concussive force to shake the walls of my house, not to mention ear-piercing shrieks of steel beams being dragged across each other. It is all unnecessary. Chimbro has the heavy equipment to handle their material properly without excessive noise. I consider these outrageous noises to be hazardous to my health and hearing. The current building inspector has shown great courage in dealing with these issues. I respectfully ask the members of the Zoning Board of Appeals to show the same courage and enforce the laws governing light industry with regards to containment of noise to their premises. So, before I read my letter, can I just say a few words?
Absolutely.
So we are here because the building inspector has identified numerous and significant instances of non-compliance of Chimbro's operations with both site plan specifications and town bylaws. Non-compliance issues that, in addition to noise, also involve a lack of required fire department access from Jewett Street and non-compliance with some conservation conditions. These are also concerns to the residential abutters. These are stated in the building inspector's letter from June 17th, 2014. But I would like to primarily address the noise, so here's my letter. This communication is in regards to Chimbro Fabrication and Coating Corporation appeal of the building inspector's determination that a modification for site approval must be filed. As direct residential abutters, we have had and continue to have significant grievance with the amount of noise generated as a result of the outdoor heavy industrial work that occurs at this steel fabrication facility. Unfortunately, Chimbro's response to both our initial efforts to work directly and diplomatically with them and the Georgetown Building Inspector's efforts to enforce town bylaws and original site plan conditions over the last 2 years have been limited and unsatisfactory. That's Chimbro's response, has been limited and unsatisfactory. My husband and I measured sound emanating from the facility over a 7-month period during 2014 and provided this information to the building inspector. Decibel readings taken from inside our home routinely registered in the 70s and 80s, and readings as high as the mid-90s were recorded. The production of excessive noise is due primarily to the fact that hundreds of steel beams, each weighing thousands of pounds, are stacked and stored in an area of the steel yard that extends nearly to our property line, frequently requiring the operation of heavy equipment 6 days a week, beginning as early as 7 a.m. within about 150 feet of our bedroom windows. According to the original site plan, a significant treed buffer was supposed to have been left standing between the steel yard and our property line, but this buffer was cleared of all vegetation and is now the primary storage site for the majority of steel beams located at this facility. Given the massive size and weight of the raw materials Chimbros uses in its daily operations, and the heavy equipment required to move these materials, common sense dictates that a large buffer between the residential property and Chimbros' heavy industrial operations must exist in order for objectionable noise to be confined to the premises, a condition required by town bylaw and provided for in the original site plan, but disregarded by company practices in recent years. Due to the fact that phases 3 and 4 of the original site plan for the 3 Farm Lane property were never completed, and thus final approval for this building plan in the entirety does not exist, we respectfully request that the Zoning Board of Appeals require that Chimbro submit a site plan modification that includes restoration of the substantial buffer of vegetation between the northerly abutting aspect of our property line and the steel storage yard to the specifications dictated in the original site plan. I would also like to say that the screening that they were referring to earlier, I think really was an anti-screening that occurred where there was trees standing and they were cut down. And again, that is the primary storage site now. With regard to the 30 trees planted, there's now about probably a 15 or 20 foot swath of grass between their storage yard and our property line, and that's where the trees have been planted. It's kind of a joke in terms of it really truly being able to contain any sort of noise. And again, we don't expect to never hear noise coming from the facility, but consistently the degree of noise that we hear is well beyond what you would call reasonable. And given the type of work they do, the materials they work with, the heavy equipment they use, I hope that that's clear to you.
Can you show me where your house is on the plan here? If approximately.
Maybe someone could help me with the layout.
That's where you would pull
Okay, then we are, I guess we're right here, and here's the steel yard.
Okay. And do you remember what year the trees were cut down, roughly?
It was long before we lived there.
Okay.
And I'm just aware of this because in this 2-year process of trying to deal with the noise, we also have copies of this and have sat with people and looked at this, and they were saying, here's the vegetation. I was also told that there was some point, the trees were cut down, there was a big stink made of it, an article in the newspaper. I went to the library, but they don't keep records in a searchable way, and I didn't know when that happened, but I was told it was documented. There was newspaper articles written about those trees being cut down.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say that was around 1999, you know.
And that's,
Do you know what the width of that buffer was, roughly? Do you remember?
I don't think the lines have changed since back then, so.
So you think it was maybe the 15-foot buffer between her property line?
Oh,
and the storage?
I don't know about that. That line along that.
I'm saying all that's
border.
the only thing that exists now is this between their steel yard and our property line, is this little strip of grass that they left.
But what I'm curious about is what used to be there, you know, like how wide it was, and I mean, it's gonna be impossible to count the trees.
Well, I
but-
think-
Yeah, before 1999, there would have been, generally, there would have been trees there. Were there openings? You know, I don't even remember anymore, but generally treed, you know.
But I think it was my understanding with the original site plan, what was there wasn't, you're supposed to plant these trees, it was, these are here, you need to maintain them, so hopefully maybe you could look at the specs and the
Yep.
scale and sort of figure out
And I think they
what
were
different
supposed to plant more trees.
even more than already existed. And
Yeah.
instead, what happened is they've cut them all down and they've planted a tiny row of 30 in the remaining little strip of grass that's left.
What types of trees were planted, do you know, were they deciduous or?
They're eastern white pines.
Okay.
Excuse me? You can get more information when you get to the conservation's letter. It goes into a little bit. I don't know if it goes into tree scale.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask you one more question before we sign?
Sure.
Any issue other than noise that being in a butter?
I mean, not, I guess not specifically, well, with me, I will not complain about anything other than noise. With other, please ask
But
that
we'll hear
question
from
of
everybody
other
else, that's
people.
fine, I just.
Although I will say I am disturbed that I became aware that they are lacking fire department access off Jewett Street that they're supposed to have. I mean, as a butter, that makes me
That's fine.
concerned if there's a lack of fire department
Okay.
access and also possible conservation issues, just being someone who's concerned about the environment in which I live. Noise primarily is my issue.
Fair enough.
Okay. Anybody else? Come on up.
I'll come up.
It's your time.
Thank you.
We're all friendly here.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I am Paula Van Durham, and I am at 127 Jewett Street. And we've been living there for 16 years now. And I will just address the board now. I am writing to the Zoning Board of Appeals to explain the negative impacts that Chiambro Steel Yard has had on myself and my family. Over the past 16 years, we have lived on Jewett Street. The steel yard has progressively moved closer and closer to our home, resulting in extremely problematic dust and noise. The amount of dust created by the steel yard that comes into our home is very alarming. As a result, we aren't even able to open our windows in the warmer weather, not only to keep the dust out of our home due to cleanliness, but because the fear of potential health impacts as a result of breathing in extreme amounts of dirt and dust. We are relegated to live in our home, close up to provide as much as a barrier as possible. Unfortunately, the fence, the debilitated fence littered with trash surrounding Chiambro doesn't serve as a sufficient buffer, yet as an eyesore embarrassment to our neighborhood. Chiambro will occasionally drop steel, creating such loud noises that it actually seems to shake the foundation of our home. Not only is it disconcerting, but the noise and the nuisance level is beyond. The decibels and horrific sounds generated in the steel yard is unbearable. It is difficult to even describe the noise that is created as a daily result of operations. Sometimes the noise generated from the steel yard will actually wake us up in the very early morning, between 8 o'clock in the morning, as early as that. As you can imagine, this has been very disruptive and bothersome. We do have 16-year-old twins as well, so this was all going on when we had newborn twins 16 years ago. I respectfully request that you take into consideration our concerns. We take pride in our neighborhood and feel the Chiambro Steel Yard operations are detrimental to our health, our home, and our worth, and our peace of mind. Thank you for your consideration. And I have taken a few pictures today. It's really only on my cell phone as the trash that is actually out there in front of the yard right now. and chunks of the wood that's just open into the steel yard. So, I don't know if anybody on the board would like to.
Did you have the buffer behind your house originally as well?
Behind our house, we're diagonal.
Or diagonal?
We're
Okay.
diagonal, so when it's a windy day, I can't even tell you how much dust, it just comes across, and you can just see it coming right across. And I have glass tables, and it's just, there's dust all over it. But when we do close the windows and I clean it off, there's no dust. When I reopen it, there's dust. And I know that there's dust, you know, just when you open the windows if a car drives by or whatever it may be, but it's very significant, so. But the noise level is very alarming.
What is the approximate distance of the buffer zone from where they have storage materials to your property line? Either of you have any?
Across the
It's
street.
right up, yeah,
We're across Jewett Street.
we're across Jewett Street.
I mean, would you say that's 50 feet, 100 feet?
From property line to property line?
From where they have there's a buffer zone, as you know, that you're supposed to be 100 feet, right, from residential property lines.
It's not 100 feet.
I think it's 50,
across the street.
but
Pardon me? You think it's supposed to be 50?
I can show you where.
Jewett's over.
They're on the opposite side, they're in the industrial.
yeah, they're on the opposite side
They're
of
in
the
the
road.
second speaker is in the industrial zone.
You're across across
They're on
Jewett
the
Street in
opposite
that
side
group.
of Jewett Street, on the side of the highway.
And one of the conditions was supposed to be a 100-foot buffer.
But that doesn't apply to, because they're in the industrial zone. That's the,
Residential, it says.
that's, yeah, but they're not, the second speaker is in, their house is in the industrial zone, which, council didn't hear me, a month ago, but again, I'll make my little speech that for
I'm sorry.
35 years, I've been coming before this board, that there's a problem with the zoning in town, that originally there was a swath right next to 95 that was all industrial. Over the years, the town has taken out pieces of that for residential, which is an unfortunate problem for this board, for my client, and for the abutters.
Okay, excuse me, I'm still up here trying to address my,
You have to address us
Right,
directly,
but
so,
when he's done, can I address my,
absolutely.
before I sit down, I just don't wanna
Yep,
sit down, okay, thank you.
go ahead.
No, she can go ahead.
Oh, okay, do you want?
Audience participation.
You can go first.
Okay, thank you.
I was just responding to David's question.
Are we considered light industrial in where we are located and where the steel yard is? On Jewett Street, is that considered light industrial?
Only type of industrial zoning allowed in Georgetown. There is no heavy industrial zoning.
Okay, so,
Wait, hold on, that's the microphone.
Yeah. The microphone fell.
You probably didn't hear you, so hold on. Chris, is that okay now? Okay. Yeah, just-
They're zoned IB. Yeah, the subject property is in the IB district, which allows for certain types of uses. You're talking about light industry, that's really a use in that zone. Without looking at the overall plan, I don't know exactly what zone they're in. I'll trust that Mitch probably does. They're in the same IB zone that your client is in. I gotta look
Yes,
at the map.
you know, Jennifer is in the residential, and the person, I'm sorry, the last speaker's in the industrial. And obviously,
Her lot is in IB.
That
I'll
side of-
trust your,
yeah, that side of Jewett is industrial.
I have the map, but I don't know which lot she's in.
Um,
Thank you.
so it's not shown on that plan.
No, I don't know if you have the zoning map, but it's,
really, it's hard to see.
Right,
You guys
so,
have a zoning.
let me show you.
yeah, I'm wondering if it's,
So you're over here, so we're up.
Paula,
Yes.
I have a smaller plan, if you,
Oh, great, thank you.
if you could,
Sure,
Yeah, that's farmland.
thank you.
and it's Jewett.
Okay.
So you would be along.
Yeah, that's true, right there.
Yeah.
One of your lots is,
Yeah, that's fine, that's right.
Yep.
I think it's this one.
Right here.
okay.
That's us right there, 127.
So you are in IB, which is industrial zone.
Okay.
Okay.
Is it this one?
Yep. 17101.
17, yeah. 101A, right?
101A,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Sorry. Yep.
Which is IB.
Residential goes down this way, but IB might go on. I think that's okay. Just show it well enough. No.
I think that was it.
Along Jewett, what, is it open? I'm sorry, I looked from Farm Lane, I didn't look from Jewett. Is there any, just a fence there?
There's a wooden fence along Jewett,
Okay.
yeah.
Can I make a clarification on that? So there's a dilapidated picket fence, just a very short. There's steel storage yard borders Jewett Street.
Okay.
There is no sort of fenced buffer between any of the other residential properties, and that is something that I actually, when I spent almost a year trying to work diplomatically with Chimbrow directly, and I met one time and made the request that there be consideration that some sort of substantial wall buffer along the lines of what they would put, behind houses that line highways, that sort of thing. But in our very brief meeting before he showed me the door and refused to speak to me personally since, his direct quote to that consideration, that request for consideration was, "It's my responsibility not to waste shareholders' money." So I don't want you to be under the mistaken impression that there is some sort of fence. Last week, I think somebody on the board did sort of make that assumption, which would be a reasonable assumption, separating the heavy industrial work they do with residential, that there is some sort of wall. And I did make that request for consideration, and it was dismissed soundly and instantaneously.
Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, and I
Can you
guess,
respond to that?
I guess first I'd like to supply my own quotes. Secondly, we probably spent something like $20,000 on sound engineers doing continuous sound surveys, looking at things that we could do, and we've done a number of things, and we've talked about a lot of that stuff before. One of the things that we talked about with the sound engineering company, and we hired those folks subsequent to the meeting that we had with Jennifer, and to be clear, at no time did I refuse to speak further with Jennifer, and at no time did I, show Jennifer the door. Now, in fairness to Jennifer's position, a while ago, she wrote a letter, and she can speak to her letter more plainly than I can, but it was pretty clear, and her letter says it, that whatever we do, doesn't really matter.
Just make sure you
We need
address
to
the
leave.
board.
And, at that point, we want to try to be a good neighbor in the community, right? And tonight, it sounds like, if I understand.
Can you address the
Oh,
board,
I'm sorry.
please?
If I understand correctly, right, I think we got some trash on the, pedestrian side of the fence. We don't want that. We're gonna go out and we're gonna clean that up. I've never heard about dust before, but in my mind, does that make sense? Can I see, yep, right? So that I gotta take a look at, right? Back in the day, long time ago, right, you used to be able to actually, not at that property, but I've been working a long time other places, that you could actually put like a light film of oil down to keep dust down. I don't think you can do that anymore, but there may be products that are available to do that. And if there are products available to do that, we're certainly, more than happy to go down that road of doing something like that. Our goal is to be a positive member of the community, not a negative member of the community. So I didn't know anything about dust until tonight, but that, I get it in the summertime. I've certainly seen dust blowing around out there. There might be something we could do about that. I gotta look at that, right? Relative to trash on the other side of the fence, if I'm understanding where that is, we don't want that. We're gonna go out and we're gonna clean that up. We spoke to the sound engineering firm specifically about a sound wall, and their professional opinion was, a sound wall's just not gonna do it, due to how our property's located And Jennifer's property is located, they're up higher than we are, and that a sound wall was ultimately probably not gonna be effective. And then, you know, and that would also be an example of, right, what would ultimately be the judge of whether or not the sound wall was effective, right? No sound wall knocks down, you know, I live probably 500 yards from a sound wall, and I can hear Interstate 95. So, you know, right, comes into the mind, well, what would be the determining thing as to whether or not it was effective? And which kind of comes back to how the bylaw is written, which is, you know, obviously subjective.
Can I ask for the information about the yard?
It's-
They got some more
We've got
audience.
some more audience.
Oh, okay.
Harry,
Just
did you wanna
finish that
read your letter?
Are you all set?
Do you have your letter, Harry?
I do not have my letter, I submitted it.
Would you like it?
I'm sure you folks don't need me to read it for you, you're all very, very literate.
Well, we will have to read it into
We're
record,
gonna have to
though.
read it, so either
Oh,
we
wasn't
read it or
ready for
you
the
read
record. I
it.
wasn't able to make the meeting.
Yeah.
We didn't proceed with the hearing last month, Harry. We continued it before we talked about the substance of the matter, so nothing was read into the record.
I understand, I
Yeah,
wasn't
so-
able to make it,
Yeah.
I'm very sorry.
It's okay?
Really, really wish I used bigger lighting.
I just
Okay.
need it back.
Dear ZBA members, I write this to you today as a 20-plus year resident of Jewett Street and in a butter within 300 feet of the 3 Farm Lane Industrial Complex. Over the years, the property at 3 Farm Lane has grown from a small, quiet metal shop company to a relatively large steel fabrication facility. While the growth and prosperity of businesses in our community are usually desirable, good things, they can sometimes bring unintended side effects to the immediate surrounding neighborhoods. The 3 Farm Lane facility is one such example of this. Along with the increase of heavy transport truck deliveries of raw materials and the subsequent return, shipping of finished steel beams, comes the commensurate increase of noise from the outdoor portions of the facility. The offloading and loading of the 18-wheelers that perform the shipping transports can be extremely loud at times. Many times when one hears loud thunder in my neighborhood, it is not the clouds overhead that are making the noise. One only needs to turn in the direction of the Farm Lane facility to ascertain from where the thunder-like noises are emanating. Of course, in addition to the noises that leave the facility from the loading and unloading of the beams and materials, also comes the beeping of the backup alarms from the trucks and heavy equipment working outside of the buildings in the outside storage areas of the site. Sometimes trucks arrive very early in the mornings before the usual workday hours begin, and the backup alarms can also be heard late into the evenings as well. While I fully recognize that backup alarm volume in decibels is regulated by OSHA as a federal safety requirement, it's beyond the control of local Georgetown boards. I would hope that the Board of Appeals would do what it can to require that the alarm sounds and other production noises being generated are prevented from leaving the site as much as possible. This facility is located in the light industrial B district. A long time ago, this facility may have at one time conformed to the description of light industry as defined by Georgetown Code 165-7. However, over the years, in spite of the well-intentioned permit and site plan reviews that were performed, there may have been some oversights in visual and auditory screening requirements necessary to adequately shield this business from the adjoining residential districts. Additionally, the inspection oversight to ensure conformance with approved permits and plans was woefully inadequate. I wish to apologize for not attending that
Yeah.
just because I wasn't gonna be able to
Right.
attend. And see it stamped. Just very briefly, if I can just, instead of reading at you, if I can just speak to you.
Yep.
We have 2 districts very close together. You had a site plan that may or may not have had adequate buffer, may or may not have had adequate screening. I can tell you, whatever was conditioned from the site plan, I can tell you right now, whatever was put in, it's not working. It's loud. Please do something. Please do something. Work with these people, cajole these people, work hand in hand with them, hit them with a stick, whatever it requires, stick or sugar. But please try to do something for these folks And the rest of the people, I mean, I'm probably within that 1 foot of the 300 foot of butter. And I don't know if you're gonna bring them to the planning board for site plan review, I don't know if you're gonna require that. I'm on the planning board, I'd have to recuse myself anyway. But whatever you guys decide to do, it can't hurt. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can we just, we feel there's some factual inaccuracies
Well,
that,
Is
let
that
me,
the
let me,
end?
okay, just can I,
The
sure.
audience, is there?
Yeah, is there any,
Just wanna get everybody.
would you like to speak? No. Okay.
Oh, we're done. Okay, sorry, Mitch,
no, I just want,
No, I just wanted to say a couple things,
Oh,
and not
Gary.
a statement of factual inaccuracy. No, I thought that was great, right? The idea of, let's try to get along, right? We want to be positive contributors to the community, not negative. I can't snap my fingers today, or a year from now, or 5 years from now, and tell you folks that we're never gonna have an I-beam, that we're loading on a truck or unloading off a truck, that's gonna go boom. You know, it's the nature of the business. We try to not have that, all right? And we continue to try to not have that. We've spent money on special forks that allow us, that are a thinner gauge fork that gives a better opportunity to get underneath steel, which is loaded on dunnage, it's loaded on wood, and that helps, right? But, so, you know, right, I can't say we're never gonna have a boom, right? But our goal is, we don't want that, right? Now, I would say I would also say, though, that as a brief aside, right? The work we do today you know, I mean, pretty much every bridge is different to some degree, but the work we do today is the same as the work that we did in 1987, and we've done throughout. We fabricate structural steel for buildings and bridges, primarily bridges, and that's what we do, day in, day out, and we've been doing that continuously since 1987. We have, as an example of that, right, we have you know, and all this is public DOT work. We have outside inspectors observing what we're doing, making sure everything's good, because traffic goes over this, and these are important things that gotta be right. We have a mass highway inspector in our shop all the time. He's not there on noise, but there all the time, right? That's what we do. We're busy right now. We certainly have been busier. And we've had other times that we've been less busy. And then the last comment I would make would be, our sound studies, and we've done several months of them, and we're getting ready to do another one, indicate that, with very few exceptions, the loudest thing that takes place in the yard is the sound of the backup alarms on the lift trucks. And I'm gonna say it was about 3 months ago, we went to, and Mitch referenced this, we went to a thing called a broadband alarm. And the difference in that versus the old style is really, really striking. And that was one of the reasons we want to do another month of data, because that's going to bring down that peak noise for sure.
I would like to second that the change in the broadband backup alarm has been wonderful. It's very soothing to the nervous system to not hear beep, beep, beep 6 days a week, you know, 7 a.m. to however long they operate at night. So I do appreciate that, and I absolutely will say that has been probably the most positive difference they've made. I do definitely still hear backup alarms at times, the high-pitched beeping. So I don't know if they've all been switched over. If they haven't, I
You need to
certainly-
address me.
if that's the case. So that's great. I would like to say, though, that I know they have hired folks and had their own sound studies, and we've been after it. We sort of, our failed attempts to meet with Chimbrow directly for almost a year, you know, we're periodically meeting with the building inspector, and they had sound studies and said so much better, so much quieter. And we requested, it was my understanding, the building inspector, what he told us, he requested raw data from them regarding that, and we did as well. And no, there was a refusal to provide any sort of raw decibel data. It was just, statistics is something I do for a living, so I would say it was just a nice way to nicely packaged, you know, them wanting to say, this is so much better, but no raw data was provided to us. So I really, you know, as far as improvements go in the loud noise, the dropping, the screeching of metal, I take exception to that. No raw data was provided to us or the building inspector per our requests. So keep that in mind.
So I just want to say that I want to resolve this. I want to resolve it for the abutters. I want to resolve it for you. But the one thing, and I'm not sure you're going there, is whether you're going to address the issues, because you're out of compliance, whether it's light industry or not. And you've already suggested that you want to be a good neighbor. So I guess what I think you've already, in your letter, you've already addressed the access road and the signage required by the fire department. I guess I want to see what else are you going to do to stop the noise. When you're saying you're stacking the I-beams on dunnage, I'm hearing that they're stacked metal to metal. Is it always wood in between? And just so you know, I worked construction for 15 years and I did work on the Big Dig, so I'm very familiar with I-beams and how heavy and the noises that they
Yeah,
make.
and you hit one with a hammer and,
Yeah, and I also realize sometimes they drop and sometimes things happen.
hold up.
So I just want to be clear that I understand what you're working with. And I understand the noise that you're hearing.
Madam Chair.
And let me just
Interrupt, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead, go ahead, Jeff.
Just one moment. We do have other correspondence, I think, that has
Oh,
to
do we
be
have to
read in
finish
as
reading
well, and
in?
I don't wanna get too far off track before, I think there were a few others,
Yeah,
if I'm
there's a
not mistaken.
conservation, that's exhibit.
I don't wanna,
Do you wanna, yeah, you have to read it in and then we'll mark it.
All I have
is
is.
it the last one, or were there
Yeah,
others?
and then we have this that we need to read,
Yes,
that David's gonna read for me.
okay.
All right, so I'll read.
Read, yeah.
I didn't mean
just
to
read in
hold that thought.
Yeah,
like I
yeah, I'm
said.
okay,
I just
I'm
wanted
okay.
to,
Conservation, and that goes back a while.
oh, this was from Conservation. Were there any other abutters that had,
I don't have any right here.
there was a pile, and I guess we got them, we covered all of those with the folks that are here, is that right? Well, why don't we just take care of this?
1, 2, 3.
To zoning, Georgetown Zoning Board from Stephen Przemski, Conservation Agent, dated January 21st, 2015, regarding 3 Farm Lane. Dear members of the Zoning Board, I've had a chance to review the notice sent out in regards to the hearing dated March 3rd, 2015 for 3 Farm Lane and wanted to comment on the project. The Conservation Commission, CONCOM, issued an order of conditions for the project on April 22nd, 1999. No certification of compliance. The document that closes out the project from a CONCOM standpoint has been issued regarding this OOC. As far as I can assess, given the fact that I do not have an up-to-date and accurate as-built plan, the construction of the project was not done in compliance of the original OOC. To my knowledge, many of the specific conditions in the OOC were not followed. It is my recommendation that the owner of the property get an as-built plan produced. This plan would allow an engineer to assess the site and compile a list of how the project was not constructed according to plan. This information would allow the CONCOM to assess the site and determine if enforcement actions are warranted. Any additional information you need, please let me know. Sincerely, Steve Przemski, Conservation Agent.
Okay, and
It's addressed in the application, I think.
And I think when I asked him if the as-built that you had submitted recently was sufficient for what he needed, he said no, correct?
Okay,
When we-
well, we're relying on that, the 2001 as-built. I don't know if that's, let me just say, as far as conservation, again, we feel that's not under the purview of this board.
No, we would refer you to conservation.
Right, we feel, and maybe that's a good way, and maybe council can help here. Conservation, in our opinion, does have continuing jurisdiction, and at some point, we have to go make peace with conservation. Our position on site plan approval is that it's a pre-construction remedy, and that even the correspondence and the newspaper articles that Jennifer referred to are all dated around 2000. Our position is, if that planning board that granted that site plan approval did not call the applicant back in for modification, why should a building inspector 15 years later, who was not the building inspector at the time, force them to do it? And again, maybe with council's help, I'm gonna permit, to the extent I can, the noise discussion to go on here. if you're saying that this hearing is about noise, then the issue is, should we have appealed the June 17th letter? And then maybe we do get back to that procedural issue that Attorney Eichmann raised. We're taking the position, we're appealing the December 1st letter, which only addresses site plan approval. So again, unfortunately, John is not here, but it's our position, reading that letter and in talking to John, that's what this appeal is all about. It's not about the noise.
Okay, so you don't wanna be a good neighbor?
We want to be a good neighbor.
Okay, so,
I'm
but
just saying,
but
and that's
Attorney
what-
Croner, I'm sorry, but what you're saying to me, if you don't wanna address the noise, that says, I do not wanna be a good
no,
neighbor.
no. I'm saying legally, maybe Brian can help here.
I had a question, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes.
and
Okay.
I don't mean to interrupt.
No,
your
no,
train
go
of
ahead.
thought.
Go
Please
ahead.
finish your sentence, and I can ask my question
Okay,
afterwards.
just, go ahead, no, go ahead.
So, by that statement, do I understand you mean that you're stipulating that these previous orders, earlier in 2014, and by that I mean March 3 and June 17, are not appealed, and therefore you failed to exhaust your administrative remedies and they're enforceable against your client as written?
Not saying that. What I'm saying is.
Seems like you might have suggested
No,
that,
I don't
but
think
please
so.
clarify.
I think what I'm saying is that, and I wish John were here, that in those letters, and in the response, the language was, let me refer, we'll just do one here. So we have let's go back to March 3rd. The March 3rd letter was the first letter to Mr. Klimp, and then Mr. Klimp writes back on March 12th, to the extent that this letter can be considered an appeal under section 16598 of the zoning bylaws, please do so. I invite you to call me at 978, the number, to discuss this matter. The argument I made last time was that John is a very honest person. If he thought on March 12th it should have been appealed to the ZBA, he would have called them and said, you can't just appeal this by letter, you have 30 days from when you receive the March 3rd letter to apply. I think that's the difference, that there was a dialogue going on. He wasn't trying to trap them and say, oh, they think they can just appeal this by writing back to me, ha, ha, ha. No, that's not how John operates. He would have called them. So, and again, I was not on board till September, and I think the clear pattern with this, and again, obviously, if this ends up in court, council can raise this de novo or as a procedural issue. Our position is, we are appealing the December 1st letter, period. So when the chair is asking us, yes, we want to be good neighbors, we're trying to tell you that it's not the type of company that just says, oh, we're not going to do anything. I'm just, for the record, I'm stating the noise issue is not before this board tonight, because that is not what we are appealing.
Okay.
We're appealing whether we have to go back for site plan.
So the letter you just referenced is the letter dated July 23rd, right? Where the conclusion
No, I'm back
is-
to March 3rd. Each letter that Mr. Klimp wrote, he wrote the same thing in there. John would write, any party aggrieved has 30 days to apply, and when the company responded, they would say, to the extent that please consider this an appeal.
The first letter I have, just for the record, from Mr. Klimp was dated July 23rd. Was there an
No,
earlier
I
letter?
submitted,
There is an
Sorry.
earlier
yeah,
one.
there's
Sorry, okay.
I submitted a packet
It
last.
was a response to specifically to the March 3rd letter. is
Yeah,
what I was saying.
I've
Sorry.
got March 3rd, March 12th, I'm back to March.
Packet he gave you last.
There's a
Okay,
packet I
okay.
submitted, I know there's been a lot of paper, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Must be this one.
It looks like this.
I also just want to say, we're not necessarily trying to make you go back to site plan. We're trying to resolve the issue as the governing authority, because that's our position right now.
Okay, that's fine.
It's
Again,
So,
That's
we're on
fine.
the same page.
Yes, yes.
Can I just,
Thank you.
sorry about that. Which letter, what is,
Go
was
out
it
the
dated?
beginning of the first letter, Patty.
I had it.
I
We
think
have the emails, but
what we're getting at
At
is
the-
this is a continuing dialogue.
Yeah, if you go
that-
back to the bottom of the pack there. that's
Yeah,
March
I
3rd.
finally had out,
Yeah.
the package I had was missing
Yeah.
a letter.
oh, you got it.
But
Just
I
got it.
think part of this is certainly a school of thought that this is a continuing dialogue
Well,
that
that's-
started in March.
in
March and
response to
concluded
Brian's-
finally in with a letter dated in
Right.
December that you finally appealed.
Right,
But
right.
that, there's one notion in that letter that you're technically appealing, but this was a continuing conversation. So
Yes.
this never would have gotten to a December dated letter had this not all started with this issue.
Yes, right,
I think
correct.
this-
Our position
A
is.
reasonable person would conclude
Right,
that
if
this
John
all
had
started
wanted to
with
cease
noise.
and desist on the noise, he would have, said, hey, I wrote you March 3rd, you didn't do it, here's your cease and desist. And he didn't do that because he wanted us to address the site plan issue.
Well, he said you were ordered to cease any operations that transmit noise or vibration beyond the premises on March 3rd.
Which we challenged, and then he never enforced it,
Okay.
because we feel that's unenforceable. And maybe he does too.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, and remember.
But he's not here.
I know. Well, the factual interpretation I wanted to correct was, this is the same business in 1989. So when the abutters are trying to say it's changed, it's the same type of steel fabrication business. Now, we can all say, geez, the town never should have allowed them in 1989 to go in as light industry. Unfortunately, they did. They didn't have to come to this board. It was a permitted use in the IB district. Whoever the building inspector was gave them a permit, and they built the building, and we went from Precise to Foster to Chinbro.
I don't think anybody's challenging that. I think what we're trying to resolve right now are the issues today, on May 5th, 2015.
Which I'm sure is the same noise as in 1989.
Well, it may or may not be, but what you're arguing is that the bylaw is unenforceable. Whether it was in '89 or whether it's today, it never was, and nor shall it ever be enforceable, is what you're suggesting.
Correct. Not without a
So that's all that we're gonna end up arguing here, is whether or not the bylaw is enforceable,
And-
which
and
I
it-
disagree with, by the way.
Okay, and for the record,
why.
that's not what we're appealing, but,
Well,
I would.
But we're
I know,
letting
you-
you speak
you're trying to.
because we're trying to resolve this issue.
Correct.
We could have said bye-bye last
Correct.
month.
I understand.
So I expect you to want to work with us.
We do, and we
Okay.
do, correct?
sure.
We
Yeah,
do,
absolutely.
we do. I'm just saying legally, that's not what we're here for. But as a practical matter, yes, they want to be good neighbors, yes, we are hearing the abutters, and yes, we want to work with you.
But legally, we have the authority to make them in compliance with the zoning laws today, correct?
If I may comment on that, Madam Chair. The issues that are being debated right now are really purely legal issues that we're not gonna resolve here today. So I would suggest the board perhaps would choose to move past them and move on to the merits of the board's feelings on the appeal that's pending. We're not gonna resolve those issues here. We don't have a judge. Judge wouldn't rule on it if we did.
So which issue do you believe is pending? Are you talking about their appeal of having to go to the site plan, or are you talking about the noise compliance? Can you clarify, please?
Well, in the first instance, it's really the will of the board, what the board sees as the zoning violations.
Which Gina
Now,
has
the
stated is the
legal-
noise.
The legal throw-in that I'll put in there is I don't think whether or not they should be back before the planning board is before this board, this is
Which
the
is
zoning
what
board.
they're arguing.
Well, they've
So you
raised that as an
disagree with
issue.
that. Okay.
But what I'm saying is this is not the planning board. There is no jurisdiction here to order them to revisit, apply for a modification, apply for a new site plan approval. They have a site plan approval. That's happened. That's on the books. Conservation Commission, this isn't the Conservation Commission. So those, from a purely legal perspective, are not issues before this board tonight. So I would focus the board, or suggest the board should focus on the zoning components only. So there are a few that have been raised, and if the zoning board agrees, are in play. One is clearly the noise.
Okay.
So we have a definition in the zoning bylaw.
Yep.
It talks about this particular use, and it's been quoted several times. I'm not gonna quote it again.
Yep.
So that is an issue before this board. The dust.
The
board
dust.
could choose that that's an
Okay.
issue before the board.
Okay.
There's also an issue that's been raised as to whether or not site plan compliance remains an issue.
So that is
Council
for
has
this
raised a
board.
legal defense to that, but again, I'm gonna suggest that's not
For this
an
board.
issue that we can resolve here
Okay.
tonight. Just whether or not there's been violation of the terms of that site plan from a purely zoning perspective.
Okay.
And then, of course, ultimately, depending on what issues are considered to be the ones that are in need of address, what's the remedy? What
So,
order would this board
I have
issue?
one follow-up question. So when the building inspector says that, in my opinion, you need to go back to site planning review, if you're aggrieved, you go to the zoning board, where might they go then, if it's not for this board to make? Because his whole point was, I thought, in one of his letters, John's, was, in my opinion, it needs to go back to site board. I'm just trying to understand the
Maybe I can-
process.
Sure, and if I'm recalling the letter that you're referencing
Right
right
here.
now,
Find it.
I believe, and he's not here to speak for himself, so
I
please forgive
understand.
me, I don't mean to put words in his mouth, that he was suggesting a possible means of remedying
Okay.
non-compliance with a site plan is to
Okay.
modify the site plan.
Which isn't
But
to
that's
go
up to the
before
applicant,
us.
so the
Okay.
applicant could
Right.
choose that path as a
Okay.
path towards compliance.
Okay.
It wasn't an order to
Okay.
that effect,
So
and
then-
that's my humble interpretation
That's
of
fine.
that, not,
Okay.
again, I don't
Can I-
mean
can
to
I-
put words in his mouth.
Can I just correct you? I think what you meant was one means of correcting the violation
Yes.
Of
was
the
to go
site
back to
plan.
the site plan.
Okay.
Not correcting the site plan,
And-
but to
Well-
correct a violation that he felt was enforceable. One of the things they could do was go back and
Sure,
correct.
well, if the site plan was
Okay.
corrected so that those were now allowable, they wouldn't be violations.
Right.
Got it.
I
Okay.
can
Right.
read,
To say it another way.
Got it.
he
All right.
wrote, "It is in my opinion that as the building inspector, I do not have the authority to modify or waive any conditions imposed by the planning board. The authority lies with the planning board alone."
Right.
And that's the
And-
December
and
1,
obviously
2014
aggrieved.
letter.
Okay, so then getting back to trying to address the issue at hand, among which is noise, one of them is noise.
Certainly.
It would help me, if it's okay with the board, to better understand what happens where in your facility. So where are the I-beams stacked? I don't understand that from this plan. I don't know if anybody else thinks that would be useful.
Well, and
But-
I think that's kind of what I was alluding to with the dunnage in between all the beams, or if there are steel on steel.
Can you just read the prior paragraph,
The prior paragraph.
Gina, if Gina can, in that letter?
Looking at the information we do have, it would appear that this project was not complete when the certificate of occupancy was issued for phases 1 and 2. Today, the approved project is still not complete, with phases 3 and 4 not built and no plan to construct this portion of the project. It would seem that the conditions of the 1999 special permit cannot be met, and only a modification of the 1999 site plan will complete the unfulfilled requirements.
Okay, so again, Brian's looking at it one way, obviously, I'm looking at it the other way. Until we have a judge, we don't know. But I'm looking at that paragraph as saying you need to go back to the planning board for site plan approval.
He's
And
telling
again, I
you-
don't want to put words in Brian's mouth, but it sounds like he's saying the building inspector doesn't have that authority to send us back for site plan approval, and that's the specific issue we're appealing tonight.
He is saying that he doesn't have the authority to waive
Right.
what planning
Right.
imposed. So when you appealed to the zoning board, that issue's kind of, it's moot at this point, because now we are the governing authority.
Well, I don't want Harry to talk in his planning board capacity and get in any type, but it would seem to me, and I talked to Howard Snyder, and I said, Howard, the planning board has not taken a position on this. I think in 2000, based on Kathleen Bradley Colwell's letter, the planning board could have brought them back in. So now we have a situation where the current planning board isn't bringing them back in. The building inspector, incidental to investigating a noise complaint, stumbled across this potential issue on the site plan and directed them to go back for site plan approval. So my narrow legal issue is 15 years after the fact, with a new owner, with an occupancy permit, with the planning board clearly having knowledge in 2000, that would certainly have a chilling effect on anyone buying real estate in this town if there's no limit on when a site plan approval can be reissued. I don't want to get into specifics, I said I wouldn't, but on that access road, it is possible, whether there's a technical access road or not, correct me if I'm wrong, fire trucks could come in through that abutting commercial property if necessary. So there is no public danger in our opinion.
The fire department.
Well, I think they could knock the fence down if there were a fire. But anyways, again, I don't want to argue what's on the ground.
Okay, again, let's focus on the issues at hand.
Yes.
I didn't want to interrupt you again.
Yes.
So let's focus on the issues at hand and resolve them.
Okay,
We got 35 minutes before we have to continue this again.
okay.
I think we can, this board, I think we can come to the conclusion that, this board has all the powers of the officer for which you're appealing at this point. And
Correct.
what we're looking at is some substantive issues of potential zoning, non-compliances here. You're arguing that we're not really going back 3 letters before to suggest that you're appealing any of that. We're saying, I think that this is an issue that started back in March, has continued through December, and they're all pretty much related. I don't know exactly at this point how to handle this planning board issue, but I do feel that as a board, we certainly got some evidence here from testimony from some abutters that there's something going on here, that a reasonable person would come to the conclusion that there's an awful lot of noise and nuisance being emanating from the site that perhaps can be mitigated in some way.
Mitigated or totally compliant with the bylaw?
Mitigated.
I don't know. I consider myself fairly reasonable, and I read this definition that's been in here for a lot longer than I've been around, and, fabrication, assembly, processing, finishing work, or packaging in such a manner that noise, dust, odor, or vibration and similar objectionable features are confined to the premises. Can they be completely defined as a property line? Probably not. I agree with you there. I think, and I've spoken with several other abutting owners of property in that area, and the floor was shaking when something was being unloaded or loaded. I don't know what in the world, I was in construction a long time too, and when something like that occurred, you ran outside to figure out what was going on. Because to me, and maybe, you can address this as the owner a bit, I'm not exactly sure why it's so necessary to sort of drop these things and cause the earth to shake, which it does. I mean, I've noticed it, and maybe nobody here specifically talked about vibration. The abutters, I think, I thought Harry addressed it in the letter, but I guess I was wrong. But I don't know if anybody's noticed, somebody, I read in a letter somewhere, somebody's saying it was shaking going on. To me, this is a little bit unreasonable, except, maybe you can address, is there any way, first of all, these issues that are really at hand seem to me, first of all, to be coming from the outdoor operations of the facility, not the indoor operations. I haven't heard anybody complaining about grinding noises and fabrication noises and things that might be coming from inside the building. To me, it sounds like all of this stuff is really related to the storage yard and movement of material, backup horns and all that. Is that fair to say, or is there a lot of other?
For the most part, I have addressed, particularly with Robert Small, who is not here, who is, I guess, second in command under Mr. Klimt, at times, the high-pitched whine of grinding that occurs indoors, but they have very large overhead doors that are open many months of the year. Understandably, I'm sure it gets hot in those conditions. That has been an issue as well, and continues to be periodically. It's not as earth-shattering, literally, as the dropping and dragging and screeching of beams, but it is a nuisance at times as well. Again, it's along the lines of the high-pitched, the backup alarms, which for the most part they've corrected, but those high-pitched whining, grinding metal noises are problematic at times as well.
I did see a video that John had taken when he visited the site as well, and it is a bit surprising at just how loud that the movement of the product is out there. And to me, I'm just not sure, being in this, I was in construction a long time as well, is there any way that the material can be handled in a manner that's not quite so?
Yeah, and we,
really.
For sure, right, we don't want to be, and the steel is robust, you can drop it for sure, but.
Do you need to?
No, and we never drop steel on purpose, and I'm sure there are times a beam might slip off the end of a lift truck and fall to the ground, but I'll tell you, that probably doesn't happen. Maybe a couple times a year we might have a beam fall off of a fork onto the ground. What generates probably more noise is getting the lift truck forks underneath the steel, because when you scrape it, it just sets up this resonance in a long steel member, and it's kind of like a piano string,
I
if you
understand.
will, right?
But you're on dunnage. You're
Well,
sitting on dunnage, and the
you're
fork
either-
should
you're-
go underneath.
You're either
and
getting
lift it.
onto dunnage or you're coming off of dunnage, though. You understand what I'm saying? It's on a truck, and we're gonna pick it up, and we're gonna put it on dunnage on the ground, okay? And when we go in to put the forks in, so that we can pick it up, there's a scratching noise of the fork against the steel. And then when we put it down onto the dunnage, you got that same thing. That's, probably the number one noise in the yard historically has been the backup alarm, right? The broadband alarms have done a great job with that. Probably the number two noise is, and obviously anybody can comment for sure, but number two noise would be the scraping sounds of moving steel around. Have we ever dropped a
That's
beam?
what I
I'm
noticed
sure
in
we have,
John's video,
but
frankly, and
don't,
it was ear piercing.
yeah,
Even
we're not throwing pieces of steel around out there. There's no reason to do that, and it's just not good practice to do that. And if you drop a piece of steel on dirt, that's probably not really what makes the noise. Anyway, it's steel on steel, steel on steel.
What's vibrating the ground when the earth, I've had some conversations and said the walls are shaking from time to time. The whole place
Yeah,
shakes. Say, what
I
was that?
I don't know. Right, my office.
Harry, is that ever?
Are you asking from an acoustical standpoint? As
I don't know. You guys hear the ground? Do you feel the ground shake from time to time, or am I just? This is maybe one. But very possibly could have happened just one or two times, and somebody remembers that. I don't live over there, so I don't
Make a
know.
30-foot beam resonate
made with the delivery
acoustically, it's going to vibrate everything around it, including the ground.
Our photos move back and forth inside when it drops, and the number one problem with the sound is the scraping of the steel. And it happens frequently, not once or twice a year.
Yeah,
He was referring to dropping.
I don't disagree with that at all. Yeah.
You were referring to something dropping on the ground and shaking.
Somebody referred to something dropping, and right, we've been there since 1987. Have we ever dropped a beam? I'm positive that we have. Have I ever seen it happen? No, but I'm sure it has. But as this lady just said, it's the scraping noise. That's why we went to a thinner fork that allows you to
Get underneath that dunnage and
do
pick it
have
up,
a
not
better
scrape
shot
it
at getting underneath the steel. It's dunnage it's a fork that's generally thinner than the dunnage, is the idea there.
I just wonder,
Harry's got one more question. Yeah, he's patient. Sorry.
Actually, it's not a question, I just
Oh.
wanted to clarify a point, and just so everybody knows, I'm not here as a representative, for the record, I am not here as a representative of the planning board.
understood.
However, this December 4th, 2000 memorandum, to Charlie Brett from the then town planner Kathleen Crowell, it was presumed that this letter in some way let the planning board know or open a window of opportunity to review it and sort of challenge the applicant that site plan review wasn't being, that the as-built plan wasn't in. That's one way you can read it, but these are pretty much standard letters that go to the building, I'm very tired, to the building inspector. When the building inspector is looking for sign-offs, there's a blue sheet that goes around. The building inspector queries each and every one of the boards, Conservation Commission, Planning, et cetera, contacts the agents and finds out if he is going to issue an occupancy permit, queries the boards. I read this letter, and I'd ask you to read it again, as the planner saying, don't grant it. He hasn't submitted an as-built. While the planner didn't come out directly say that, she just pointed out that as one of the conditions in the permit, in the site plan approval, the as-built plan, which is required, was never submitted. Just setting up conditions and a justification for not granting the
Can I,
But as point of fact, it was granted the
Can I
occupancy
re-
It
permit,
was,
so.
but I just wanted to clarify it because.
I
perhaps
understand.
heard
I see
wrong.
how you read it,
was
but
interpreted, or
unfortunately,
seemed to be
it was
interpreted as
granted.
though
Right.
This was a notification to the planning board, and that opened up a window of opportunity for
Okay.
the planning board to.
But again, I don't wanna, this is
I just wanted to clarify
2015.
that.
but let me just, I can rebut that very quickly. Jennifer already has really, with her research, and I have some of the same articles that I do not want to submit into evidence, but one headline says, Planning Board not happy with outdoor storage at Foster Precise in 2000. Again, my legal argument, and counsel can comment or not, is one of laches, one of estoppel, that the planning board had every opportunity at that time. I don't know if you were on the board or not,
I was
Harry.
not.
Okay, Harry was not. Thank you. They had every opportunity at that time to do whatever they were supposed to do, and they didn't do it.
But what can we do now?
I know,
mean,
can we
it's
talk
actually-
about how we're
my
gonna
point.
mitigate the noise and the
Yes,
dust?
and again, the noise, we're willing to talk about because we want to be a good neighbor. However, we feel you do not have jurisdiction tonight to discuss the noise.
I think
I don't
you're
know if I agree
incorrect.
with that.
You don't have to agree, Madam Chair.
I don't
We
agree.
can
either.
agree to disagree.
Council can take
We
any
can agree
position
to
they
disagree.
want.
to
This is
disagree.
your
Okay.
meeting.
We're not here on a noise
Did you hear
violation.
that? It's my meeting.
Yes.
How are you
That's
gonna
why
fix
we're-
the noise?
That's why we're willing to discuss it, Madam Chair. I'm just raising that,
I think Dave
as
has-
council
Yeah,
knows.
Dave had,
You know, going back to June 17, 2014, you received a letter, Jack, from John McKivier about some of the differences observed. And we'd started to talk about this a little bit earlier because you've been there longer than anybody, right? And part of these things that have been neglected, the proposed tree line on pages 1 and 2 of the plan no longer exist. Now, you're familiar with that?
And that, right, that's news to me, we,
Now, you've had that, you were informed of that almost a year ago, and
no, I'm saying that idea that whatever those trees were that were, my recollection of what happened back in, whatever that was, 99, 2000, is that all the trees that we were supposed to plant, we planted.
well, this is two different things, because that's my second point, what it's gonna be, I'm gonna address. But the first one, the proposed tree line on pages 1 and 2 of the plan no longer exists, which means they were cut down, in my opinion. That's how I interpret this. Line item 2, the proposed white pines, 1 and 2 of the plan were not planted. Now, were you aware that there should have been some plantings done at the time, too?
As I've said, to the best of my recollection, we did all of the plantings that were required back in whatever that was.
You know, a lot of this just goes back.
And to be, now, are we talking about, because I think they're generally listed as, to be a 4-inch diameter tree, like 50 feet on center. Is that what we're talking
I
about?
don't have the specs on that, but
But I mean,
obviously,
but am I on the right theme of that? Because, right, if the issue is, we need to plant trees 50 feet on center along the property line, I'm happy to do that.
To agree to what?
Or was it
We'll
4
put trees-
feet? Was it 4 feet? I don't know. Were they evergreens? I don't know.
But,
There's
you know what I
supposed- I
mean?
think there was
If,
supposed
if,
to be
if
white
we,
pines.
if you folks want us to put trees, more trees along our property line, we're happy to do that. Happy to do
Well,
that.
this is kind of working towards what may be a partial solution for us
Well,
to
sure,
help you
yeah.
become a better neighbor, too.
Well,
Okay?
yeah, I'm not arguing with you.
No, and you know what?
Fine.
Forget this whole thing about 40 feet apart, but, you know,
No, I'm saying that because I wasn't sure what, like,
You gotta
right,
make-
we,
I think it was-
we're
I
not,
think it
we're
was-
not
I
out there
think it was
cutting down
4 feet.
trees, you know, we're just not.
but regardless, you know, then it's a natural sound barrier that, it's gonna help. Is it gonna eliminate there's nothing that's going to eliminate this 100%. I get it, okay? And unfortunately, the business has been in existence. Georgetown has no regulations between heavy industrial and light industrial. So, again, the business works where it is, and there's not much difference. There's not many things we can do or say. However, I'm trying to help mediate everyone, and that's, you know, Gina's goal here is she's ready to say, listen, you know, here's some things that we think we can help both parties involved and try and get some harmony here, because, yeah, we do appreciate the business in Georgetown, but we also have, you know, the sympathy for the abutters. It's unfortunate, and I know you guys would love to be a good neighbor, and, you know, but it all comes down to, you know, there's gotta be a third party to help mediate this.
I mean, if you say plant 50 trees and that's your decision, great. If you're saying plant 50 trees and confine the noise to your premises, that's not so good.
I
So
think
we're
any-
trying to work things out,
I
but
understand.
we're kind of handcuffed here, I think.
Well, I haven't
I
heard a
think-
plan. What's
I
the
haven't-
mitigation
yeah.
plan?
And
You tell us, what's your mitigation plan to make this reasonable? Because what I've seen out there and what, from talking to people and the videos that I've seen, if to a common person, the noise being emanated there from that place is a little unreasonable. It's unreasonable, I think, in my opinion, at least at times, quite unreasonable. So how do we make it reasonable?
Right, and I think reasonable is the word, and maybe what I would expect of everybody. You know, I think you guys understand it's not gonna be quiet like a church. And but you have to put in some good faith effort to make it as quiet as
Well, I'd like to hear what they're
reasonably,
proposing.
yeah, like what, yeah, thank you. What can you do to make it quiet?
What are you
and-
proposing? You're not here to talk about it tonight, so you got us handcuffed.
Oh,
You
no,
don't
no,
wanna
no,
talk
no,
about
no,
noise.
no, we've tried. Jack has mentioned it.
Well,
They've
yeah,
tried to-
Casey, you planted
They've tried to
trees.
train employees, they've planted trees.
Train employees to do what?
We
That's
can,
new.
we
That's
can
something
propose
new.
more, though, to Mitch's point, right? We didn't really prepare for this meeting to discuss that, because we didn't think we were discussing that.
But this is
So-
going on for a year, so clearly you've got some idea of how to.
And they've been
try to-
working on it.
Well,
Okay.
we've done it, you know,
Let's hear
right,
it.
I mean,
Why don't you just tell them what you've
So
done?
then what do you need? Do
We read what he
you?
did.
What's that?
We read what he did, we're also reading what was
Yeah.
supposed to happen that didn't happen.
Well, what
Well,
was
and-
supposed to happen, again, we're challenging the legality of that. On the other
Okay, well,
hand,
you
on
wanna-
the other hand, and we want to be good neighbors, and that's why they did the broadband alarms. They've
Okay,
planted
that's-
trees.
Yep.
Okay, the
Why
broadband.
don't you talk about the problem with the vendors?
and
The
we,
Hours
delivery
of
trucks.
operation, training employees, what was it, training employees, what did that?
all of that stuff, right? I mean,
Training employees to do what?
to try to do the best they can to get the forks all the way underneath the dunnage so that we're not scraping on it.
So you lower them all the way to the ground, slide them in on the ground before you hit the steel and bring it up so it's a little
Well,
quieter
you know, I
when you
mean,
load.
it's
Is
a
that
little
what
more
we're
involved
talking
than that,
Steel on-
but
with
I mean,
steel
that's
on
the
steel,
idea
that
of
doesn't help.
of that.
With
Yeah,
steel on
steel
steel,
on
that
steel is
doesn't help.
difficult. You know, we looked at some things that we discarded, right? There's some things that you could perhaps do to the surface of a fork to reduce that steel on steel noise, but then you start walking down the road of whether or not that's a good idea in terms of making the thing slipperier to have it fall off.
Plus you'd be
So,
replacing it all the
you know,
time anyways.
really, we continue to train, we continue to do that. Maybe, you know, I heard Jennifer say that the broadband alarms have been a big help, and that was nice to hear. But she has still heard some beep, beep, beep. Maybe we got a piece of equipment that still has a regular alarm. I did not think that we did. Now, on occasion, if one of our pieces of equipment breaks down, we'll bring something in, and whatever we bring in generally is generally not gonna have that. If we were gonna talk about what we can do to do more of, to me, I would say what we could do to do more of that would be easy for us, and really comes down to other folks, how they feel about it, is, you know, we spend a lot of money to buy the property that we have, and we want to be able to use our property as we see fit. And outside, we want to be able to store our steel outside. We have done that for many, 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 many years. If the board or our abutting neighbors would be happy with or would like us to put more trees into the buffer zone, or put more trees on, or put trees on their property, or, you know, we're fine with that, You know, we're not at all crazy about the idea of a sound wall, and for one thing, right, we've been advised by people that know a lot more about it than we do, that it's not gonna work. And also, right,
Not gonna
trees,
work, meaning it's not gonna contain your site to the premises, or it's not gonna it's not gonna reduce the level of noise that's
It-
gonna reach the
it's-
homes. I
it's
kinda
pretty-
find it hard to believe the sound wall isn't gonna help.
It's pretty unpredictable how much help you would get out of building a sound wall. And, you know, right, if we need to, maybe we'll bring a sound engineer with us sometime to talk about it. The sound thing gets involved. You know, the decibel thing, it's a logarithmic scale, and there's a lot involved in that, and I am not expert in it. If we can reach happiness with planting trees in the buffer zone or on somebody else's property, we're happy to do that. Happy to do that.
Okay.
And I don't mean a tree 40 feet on center. We'll put 100 trees. But we want to be able to make use of our property, and we would like our neighbors to be happy. And in fairness to us and our neighbors, right, it doesn't help having and you guys didn't write it either, right? But it doesn't help to have a bylaw that, depending on who is interpreting it, there's no, we could build a sound wall to the sky and plant redwood trees. And someone, because it doesn't say anything about reasonable, someone could have the opinion that you have not confined the objectionable portion. And that's unfortunate. And we didn't do that. And Jennifer, et cetera, they didn't do that. And you didn't do that. And that's really one of the problems here is, you know, we'd like to do something and be done and move on. But the way that's written, right, my interpretation of that is there is no way we can do anything and not necessarily be back here a month from now or 2 months or 3 months from now. Now, we'll live with that, right? If the answer is if people would be happy with our planting more trees or shrubs or whatever in the buffer zone, we're no problem with doing that. Happy to do that.
Okay, what about the dust?
I got to do a little work on that. I'd never heard that criticism before. It doesn't strike me as that's not so. But what we can do about it, I'd have to look at that. I'm not sure. I would like to think there's something that we could do, but it's got to be environmentally compliant and off the cuff. I don't know what that product is. I got to think there is one, but I don't know
And
what
if
it
I
is.
could just
There's some
add,
back to
there's
South
other
Dallas.
businesses, there's a sawmill, there's other businesses in that area. So I don't know whose dust, I feel badly for them, I don't know whose dust it is.
You can, I look out my window and it comes up over the
Wow.
dilapidated fence.
Address
the
And
board.
up
way.
over the dilapidated
You
fence in my window.
Yeah.
I can take a video if you would like.
And what about fencing?
Whose fence is that?
That's our fence.
Okay.
Okay,
Is it in disrepair?
That's exactly.
You know what? I gotta tell you, I don't look at it that often, right? The idea that there's trash on the other side of it, right, we're gonna clean that up. And if the fence is dilapidated, we're gonna fix it.
Maybe put a
And,
solid-
and if it's a,
Fence.
and if it's
You know?
a picket fence, perhaps.
It's,
not
it's,
be
it's a,
with
you can't look through it.
Okay. So, yeah, you
Oh,
need,
it's stockade?
oh, but it
You
just
can't see
happens to
through
be
it.
missing.
There are missing slats. Paula has pictures on her phone if you need to see that.
But
No, I trust you.
in answer to Jeff's question, it's what I said at the beginning of the hearing. This was, and Harry wasn't on the planning board back in the 70s, this was a lousy place to put an industrial zone. I feel badly for my client, I feel badly for the abutters. You put an industrial zone away from residences. I'm sure, and Harry doesn't have to answer this because he's not here as the planning board, but I think 2015 planning would not just put a swath next to your highway and say, that's our industrial zone. I'm sure they pay $35,000 in taxes. I'm sure they wanted to increase their commercial and industrial tax base. That's why they did it in the 70s. Now we're in 2015, it's a different world. I don't
But-
know what the answer is.
And I agree, and that's why we're trying to resolve what we have. We
But there-
can't change the history that brought us here, but we can make everybody happy, hopefully, with reasonable solutions. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Are there any
And that's what this
things-
board is here. I mean, we all wanna solve this, that's why we're here.
I mean, just for the record, if you gave it, even if we're not here for the noise, in my position, if you gave a decision saying they had to plant 50 trees, they had to fix the fence, and
What
anything
about-
else we considered
what about-
reasonable.
What about the yards? Like, are there things, I don't know anything about, I'm not in construction.
Well, let him finish his
Are there-
point, I think.
No, I guess that's what I'm saying. If you gave us reasonable,
Sorry.
if you say the noise has to be confined to the premises, I'm not the litigator, but we're going to court.
I don't think anybody said that.
No.
Who said, no, the only person that said that tonight is you, I think.
Okay, well, because I'm reading
All
the
I said was we
definition.
need to be
Okay, you read it
reasonable.
enough.
Okay,
Move on.
all right.
What's that?
It's a very good.
No, I'm
But
serious.
how do you say confine some of the noise? I mean, what's the standard?
You mitigate some of the noise. I mean, we can't sit here where, okay, do you want us to force you to go do a noise study for 6 months and then
No.
go through that expense and
No.
then do the studies to put X, Y, Z in, continue to monitor it, continue to measure it over the next so many years and determine, you know, the tree growth and what the decibel level reduction is, and you want us to do all that? Or
No.
you want to sit here and say, you know what, a reasonable person would say a sound wall will do a much better job of mitigating noise than planting a few trees. Frankly, I have a very hard time believing that sound wall would not help. Frankly, you're dismissing it, I think, because perhaps trees are cheaper than a sound wall, which anyone could assume to be the case.
Probably true.
You know, I don't know. I don't know, but
But trees are prettier than a
I'd like to
stone wall.
see. I'd like to maybe come up with a plan, and I think anybody who can come to a reasonable conclusion that there are things that can be done to help, we could probably move on.
Okay.
That's all I'm getting at.
Jennifer's standing there, and then
Point. So I just don't want anyone to be satisfied with, we'll plant as many trees as possible, because the swath of land that is available to now plant trees is a third to half the width of this room. That everything that was supposed to be trees is now steel yard. There's nowhere to plant the trees, and I think the issue is we've come to noise because they are so far out of compliance with the original site plan. There was a tremendous, it looked like a tremendously large buffer compared to what there is now. I don't even think we'd be here had they adhered to the original site plan. And where they're storing the steel is as close as possible to the abutters. And I have tried with Hannah Bass to try to say, can you move your steel anywhere else within your property that's just further from our homes?
That's what I've been
right
trying
next
to
to
ask.
ours, directly across the street from Paula and Jack. And no response, no response. I emailed her, I said, what are you doing to help us out here? We planted some trees. I said, great, are you gonna move any beams? Because according to the June 17th letter, they haven't been moved at all. To the extent that the tree planting, it requires a tree planting. Well, planting the trees didn't make the steel needs, it didn't require that the beams be moved, so the short answer to that is a no.
So-
The beams are entirely too close to so planting trees is not satisfactory. There's no space to plant additional trees.
that could
And
be
can I,
Yard,
may I
beams on
comment?
the yard.
conservation. Is that part of
Yeah,
conservation?
Well,
Isn't gonna
if
matter.
I'm wrong,
What?
No.
No, as far
have to
as
do it
if
in
they're
terms of
encroaching on
Mitch,
what the
on the
buffer
left-
originally
on the
was.
Could be,
left
but they're
side.
looking at different values, different
The-
reasons, different purposes.
now Steve just pointed to a plan and said the left side was all trees, and now it's not. What,
Why don't you just address whether moving
Yeah.
the beams is gonna help at all?
he said the whole thing was trees, but
I don't know, probably not, but,
Well, I just want that in the
But-
record, that
but-
moving the beams, would you,
what
would you
I.
say
what-
moving the beams is gonna help at all?
Further from, why would?
Well, I can't, I don't think it makes it louder. If
I
we
think
move the beams right, I don't think it
Why
does
would
that.
it be
But let me,
quieter if
let
you
me,
do that?
let me,
I think where she's getting at is what's being stored out there is that it's all steel beams, there's nothing else. There's nothing being
It's-
stored out there that maybe
yeah, I
isn't
mean,
quite as loud when
it's
you
all
move it
steel
around.
beams, it might be channels and
I mean,
plate,
is
but
there
yeah, it's steel
something
beams.
that can
But
be stored in it?
the point I wanted to make, though, is that I believe the way that border is drawn, is that there's 100 feet of buffer, and 50 feet of it exists on Jennifer's property, and 50 feet of it exists on our property. I believe that's how it's drawn, and obviously that can be seen there, whether I'm correct or I'm not correct. My point there is, there's plenty of room to plant more trees. Now, whether or not they're gonna be sufficient to get the result that's desired, you know, right, I don't know. But there's certainly plenty of room that we could put more trees. And, so, you know, we're happy to do that. Now, could we move the, steel 50 feet or something? Sure, we could move the steel 50 feet. As a non-expert in acoustics, I don't know. I would kinda question whether or not that really did anything.
Well, if
But-
you moved it 50 feet and planted 54 feet of trees,
That's
Or just
the
move
point.
it as far
Well,
from
we
our
can-
property as possible, not even just the 100 feet. Can you find another area on your property that aren't right next to the abutters to store the beams? That's a question I've been asking and that no one,
Well, we would like to have benefit of the use of the property that we bought.
so you're not encroaching on property, you're just going right up to your property line?
We go to within, I don't know, 10 feet or something of the edge of the buffer.
Okay.
but the original site plan, it was all supposed to be a buffer and now it's the steel yard where all the steel beams.
The letter
Well-
I have, June
I see
27,
that site plan.
2014, one of the, special condition 1D, it states, all material storage should be removed from the 100-foot buffer to residential draining easements and septic systems.
Yeah, we don't have any steel in the 100-foot buffer. Yeah,
Am I
and-
mishearing what we've been talking about for the last 5 minutes? You said you're almost up, right up to you're 10 feet from the property line.
No, what I said
That's a
was
buffer.
our store,
buffer,
our,
the
our,
buffer.
our steel's within about 10 feet of the buffer.
Of the buffer.
Yeah,
okay.
you did say
Now, we did back when that letter, we got that, we went and looked, right? And down here is where, down here is where Jennifer's home is. And we didn't have any steel that was in the buffer zone. Here, over here, we had a couple pieces that were in the buffer and we moved them. But we did, we don't have anything in the buffer.
But there is room now, if you chose to make that 100-foot buffer. It could conceivably be some type of sound barrier, whether it's,
Correct,
wall.
the buffer is 50
What she's
feet,
looking at.
the buffer is 50 feet on their property
Okay.
and 50
I gave
feet on
someone-
Jennifer's property. So it's not,
Give one to Jeff.
it's not,
It's not 100-foot on
correct,
John Rose.
correct, correct.
It didn't specify that here.
Part of Jennifer's property is in the industrial zone. So the 50 feet goes on either side.
Point of information, there's a 10-foot wide easement in between them for the Conservation Commission, I believe, so that they can access land in the back.
That's right.
Correct.
Sorry, Harry. Say that again.
There was a 10-foot wide access easement coming from June Street along the property line, and at this point, I don't recall whether it was on which side of that
It's right here.
property line.
Yeah,
So
Harry's correct.
I believe it's on their side
It's on
of
the
the line.
Chinbro side. Yeah, correct. Right there.
And so, I have a question, oh, sorry, Harry, go ahead.
I would just wanted to make a suggestion, it's getting late, it seems like we've,
We're actually gonna have
it
to.
seems like we've come to like this kumbaya moment here.
Make a motion to go beyond.
Can we sing?
Cooperative.
That's
And
what I was
I'm,
gonna say.
I'm just wondering if, perhaps the prudent thing to do at this point would be to, ask the applicant to, put their plan in writing. What it is that they want to do, that they believe would be a good way to mitigate, an issue that maybe isn't really something that they want to admit. And, maybe what they could do is, since they've had such extensive sound testing and studies done, maybe they could ask their engineer to, look at the benefits between a sound wall and extending the buffer and planting trees, and which would be beneficial, or more beneficial to mitigate the noise to the butters. And bring that back to the board, so that the board could then look at that at another meeting and, come up with some solutions and some conditions.
We actually have to, have a motion to continue it past 10,
Motion
if someone wants
just
to.
to go beyond the
To
10.
continue this hearing beyond 10 o'clock till, do I have to say what time?
Just a motion to go beyond the,
Yeah.
to
Beyond 10
10
o'clock.
10 p.m. rule.
To a reasonable
To a
time.
reasonable hour.
Now you can go however long you want.
Somebody's got a second
Second.
that?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion
You guys don't get a
passed.
vote, unfortunately.
No, I'm sure council and I can agree on a reasonable time.
You have to read that, you do have to get this
Exhibits?
read in.
Okay, can
at
we
some
have
point.
Dave read that in? Just so it's done.
Get that.
These are the exhibits for 3 Farm Lane. Exhibit A, plot plan dated 9/29/14, drawn by Gateway Consultants of Linfield, Mass, stamped by civil engineer John P. Judd, file with application. Do I need to go into all the who did everything, or just Exhibit B, building layout plan as built,
Date.
and dated 12/29/14. Exhibit C, new correspondence, letter from Conservation dated January 21, 2015.
That was right.
Exhibit D is a letter from Building Inspector Chambro resigning zoning complaint dated March 3, 2014. Exhibit E is a letter from Building Inspector to Chambro resigning zoning violation dated June 17, 2014. F is a letter from Chambro dated July 23, 2014 regarding the response to the letter of June 17th to the Building Inspector. Exhibit G is a letter dated August 8, 2014 from Building Inspector to Chambro regarding as-built plan. Exhibit H is a letter from the attorney Mitch Crona dated October 15, 2014. I is a letter from the Building Inspector, denial letter dated December 1, 2014, and a response to letter dated 10/15/14. Exhibit J, 1999 site plan approval dated April 20, 1999. Exhibit K, 1999 site plan last revised 5/14/99, signed 5/26/99. Exhibit L, certificate of occupancy permit, number 99-117, date August 21, 2000, signed by Charles Brett, previous inspector. Exhibit M, planned existing conditions dated 10/3/13, revised on 7/23/14, drawn by Gateway of Linfield. And Exhibit N, plan interim as-built prepared for Precise Fabricating dated 1/8/01. Exhibit O, new correspondence read into record, letter from Harry Latiglia dated 4/6/15. And Exhibit P, new correspondence read into record from Jennifer Schultz, 138 Jewett Street, dated 4/1/15. And Q, new correspondence via email, Paul Rice, 137 Jewett Street, dated 4/6/15. Exhibit R, packet attorney presented the 4/7/15 hearing, which includes some exhibits already marked for: 1, an email dated from Attorney Crona dated 9/15/14. 2, email dated 1/5/15 from Building Inspector to Attorney Crona in answer to an email dated 12/29/14 from Attorney Crona to the Building Inspector regarding extensions of time. Exhibit S, letter via email received 5/5/14 from Paula Van Durham, 127 Jewett Street. And Exhibit T is a memo from planning to Charles Brett dated 12/4/2000. Thank you.
Harry, I like,
And I
there
just-
you are.
Before you, can I just get the letters that
You
were
can
read
have
into the record
Oh.
back as part of this package?
And you can have these back too. Just curious about, that basin, is it working properly? The detention basin? This is a random question, I know, but, I noticed that was one of the things you said was built incorrectly. It's not overflowing or anything. Okay. Harry has a good point, because I think we could sit here and go back and forth for the next hour on what you should maybe do, but I think it's a good idea to come back with what you would like to do, and I think it would behoove you to have input from the abutters, that are, especially the ones that are here, or the ones that wrote letters. I don't know if anyone else thinks that's a good idea, or.
Well, I think it's a good idea, and I think that's part of the way, you meet them, there's gonna be some meeting in the middle, okay? Nobody's gonna walk away from this 100% satisfied. It's just the way it's going to be. But there's some issues that were brought to your attention, Jack. You're not aware of the fence, okay? The dust is kinda new to you as well.
Never heard of that
You
before.
certainly know everything about the sound, you've been listening to that for years.
That I've heard
So,
before.
there's some other things there, you know what I mean? I know you wanna walk out personally and take a look at the fence, get, maintenance out there to try and clean it up a little bit. There's some ways to mitigate dust, and I'm sure, you'll figure it out, whether it's, the mist machines or whatever, okay? Maybe it's better fencing, maybe with the holes in the fence patched, maybe it's not quite as bad, but, we can't sit here and tell you exactly what needs to be done today.
Otherwise, we'll be here having coffee, we'll be here having breakfast.
Can I just try to clarify with Brian? So you're reserving your right to dismiss the appeal on a procedural on the timeliness issue that John, well, all right, I'll direct to
no
the.
such vote.
I'll direct to the chair. You're reserving your right to dismiss based on our appeal, based on a timeliness issue. You said that at the beginning. It sounds like, according to council, you don't have the authority to send us back to the planning board. You do have the authority, in your opinion, as the zoning, an extension of zoning enforcement to enforce the zoning bylaw. Is that,
Based on the appeal of the building inspector, correct?
okay, all right, I'm just trying to understand. And again, I wasn't trying to be difficult, this is legal posturing that in my mind, we were here to appeal his decision for site plan. That doesn't mean we're not willing to discuss the real elephant in the room, which is the noise and the, I don't wanna say town and gown, but industrial and residential clash. Because of no one's fault, just the way it is. Is that?
I mean, to put it a little more simply, you can argue whether or not you need to go back to site plan again for the purposes really of fixing this problem, for lack of, I mean, technically that's not what we'd be doing, but that's really why. Or, I think for me personally, if I can get satisfied that you have a plan that can go a long way towards mitigating this problem, I might be legally convinced that maybe your appeal is got a good argument.
Okay.
Provided there's some means of addressing the real issue here. I mean, because it's either one or the other. It's either you gotta go to site plan probably and do this, in which case the appeal, this would be denied and we're gonna, you know, what have you, and then you can appeal that and do whatever you want. Or going back to what you said a month ago, was you can spend your time doing all this stuff over here, or you can spend your time addressing the issue. And I think for me personally, I agree with that completely. And that's where you started this whole thing.
Right, and practically speaking, Jack, that's what the company, they wanna be a good
spend
neighbor.
your resources and your
I mean, we got
time.
sidetracked with a legal issue I raised, with a legal issue John Eichman raised, but Jeff, that's in a nutshell, and I'm sure that, I don't think everyone's gonna be happy, but, maybe
go
that's the
through all
best.
this legal mumbo
Oh,
jumbo,
yeah,
and at the end of the day, you can reserve your
Right.
right to appeal, and we can reserve
Right,
our right
right.
to, you
But
know,
as
deny
a-
you and this and that.
I know
but-
you guys wanna be you know, you wanna get to, the root of the problem is the noise and the proximity to a residential abutter. That's the root of the problem. If I could just make a suggestion, I am not available for your June 2nd hearing, I'm gonna be out of town. To give them enough time, and I would like to encourage them, and I'm sure they will, to try to improve the relations, or at least get the dialogue going. I thought it was going, but I guess they're looking at it, Jennifer's looking at it one way, we're looking at, but if we could go maybe to July meeting, if you have one, that maybe with 60 days, that would give time for both sides to maybe see if we can come back with something.
Have we done this in the past where we have a special meeting?
No,
Okay.
no,
Did I make that
if
up
it
in
was
my
an
head?
emergency,
Okay.
and the one
No, but
thing
we
that
could-
he
we could
called
call
an
our-
emergency didn't turn out to be an emergency, cause
I
he
mean,
asked to
We
continue
could,
it.
we could have it, if we weren't scheduled for a July meeting now, we could have it the following week. We can change that meeting date now.
I
So
have
we're not
someone
allowed
coming
to
in
add
to
a
file for July, and I gave her the date.
With,
Even if it hasn't been your policy, you can always,
Add
as
a
the
meeting.
chair,
But you
call
can-
for a meeting.
You can add a meeting.
What is the
It just
July
has to
meeting
be
date?
posted.
No, she already posted the July.
I'm just asking what the date is.
Oh, what is the date?
What is the July date?
July 7th.
But what you're suggesting is adding
What
one
I
in
was suggesting
between.
was adding a meeting in between
Yeah.
to address just this.
well, I mean, I would think 60 days maybe if we wanna come back,
Let me just
so we're
check.
not rehashing, I think it's gonna take some
July 7th.
time. And I'm not trying to delay this, but in one respect, it's been going on for 30 years, unfortunately.
I was just thinking maybe 60 is a lot,
All right,
maybe
well,
45.
whatever the board's
I-
pleasure
I-
is.
I mean,
You know,
I
I know
don't
you-
know.
What's reasonable for you to look at the dust? I don't know what this takes.
We wanna give you enough
Oh, I
time to
think we can
make,
figure something out with the dust probably this week. right? Now, it may
So
take a little
why
bit
go
longer to
60
do
days,
something
I
about it.
guess? Why drag it
If you
out?
wanna go June 9th, maybe?
Well,
I don't know.
the
I don't-
noise, I think, is a more complicated thing,
I'd
but
have to look
Well,
to
do you
But-
need 60 days? I guess, I mean, this has been going on.
Get the room too.
we'd probably rather have 60 days, but,
Well, it's July, when's the?
truthfully, if we have 60 days, we're gonna.
July 7th, so.
Whether we
why-
got 60 days or not, right, if we come up with some things to do,
We need to send.
we're not gonna
an
wait
extension.
60 days to do them.
I mean,
Right.
they didn't have you
Right.
tell them to do the broadband alarms.
You know, if
And
we
I'm not
fig-
trying to harp on that, but, you know, that was a significant improvement and a significant
agreed.
investment, and.
Yeah, if we can figure out, and I think I'm sure we can, right?
Yep.
What we can do with dust, no, we're just gonna do something about it, right? We're gonna take a look at the fence, we're gonna just fix that, right?
I
I'd
mean, we
like
could
to- I'd
agree
like to
too.
see a plan,
Well-
you know, and Harry's right, I mean, let's come up with a plan, and it may be, lay it right on the site plan here, you know, whether it's a sound wall, whether it's trees, combination of the two, whether it's an operating plan that might help mitigate things a little bit. You talked about training, I don't know if your equipment, you've already worked on alarms, is there anything else, whatever, you know, whatever you can come up with.
Whether it's
What is
45
the
days or
source of the
60
noise
days
and-
is fine, whatever you folks wanna
60
do.
days is fine. I just,
Okay. I guess what I would love to know is that if we come back here in 45 days, we come back here in 60 days, and whatever it is that we are proposing is satisfactory to you, are we done? Are we done?
But-
Because
well, it's
that's what I
satis- I
struggle
guess
with,
if
is
it's
you're never
satisfactory.
done. You're just never done.
But in fairness to that, they're always gonna, if some new technology comes out, I don't know when broadband alarms came out. I think as a good neighbor, they're gonna continually try I'm not saying they're gonna build a $200,000 wall, but I think as technology changes, and what I was gonna suggest is, if they put up a new fence, you know, you can send a letter to the administrator assistant saying, and then the board could, I don't think, what Jack's saying is, during the 60 days, they're gonna make efforts.
Right.
And do things.
And not wait until we approve it at
Correct.
the end of the
Right.
60
Correct.
days. I understand what you're saying, but we
Now, there may
can't-
be
we
some
can't
element to
commit-
You're gonna plant a
that we-
50-foot tree buffer in
that we
30
might-
days, but you might
that we
present
might,
it to
right,
us
there
as
might be
something that
elements
has
of
to
it that we might wait, right? Like fixing a fence? No, our fence needs to be fixed, we're gonna fix it,
If
right?
this board is
If we want to
satisfied with
plant some
that-
trees in the buffer zone that's on our property, if we wanna do that, we're gonna do that, right? Cause we can do that. But I would like to come back to for a second, though. We wanna be done. You know, and I might be the only one in the room, although maybe this gentleman was around back then, but if you were, right, you would be.
Wait, you gotta address me and you've gotta
I did it
back
again.
that over again.
Don't talk.
Don't talk.
Eyes up here.
Are you a school teacher?
No, I have an 8 and a 6-year-old.
I can,
Oh, no.
I can read.
Chris? I don't know.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Where did
No,
that
you're
go?
okay.
I don't know.
That probably goes in
Extra.
there. Oh, that's
That's
extra.
extra.
One over here too,
Then
so don't worry.
You're all right.
Don't worry about it.
Hopefully,
fine.
can you hear us?
This was just on the floor. Is that anything?
There was only one wire going up.
It's
I
fine.
think it's just an extra.
No, that's for a laptop.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
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 Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, and I brought my.
Thank you, Chris.
Extra.
Thank you, Chris.
It's getting late.
I know, I think we're all getting.
I mean, and council can maybe.
We wanna be done.
The council can maybe help with this, but
We
if
wanna
you
be
have a
done,
decision
right?
from this board that, I think a decision from this board that says, you know, we found that, you know, whatever it is, I don't know what the decision would be. You weren't in compliance, we found that this plan is, you know, you've done this to get in compliance with the bylaw or something, I don't know. Can, 10 years from now, could somebody come along and read this unless it's changed and argue that you're being too loud again? They probably could. But again, if this board is
And that, you know,
satisfied that
and
you're
that
making
part's-
efforts
that
and
part's
we
troubling,
determine that you
right?
have, at least there's another document that says, we came before the zoning board and we did this, and they agreed that this was a reasonable effort, and
And
in
we're
order
gonna
to
go down
meet
this
this section of
road.
the bylaw.
We're gonna
then-
go down this road, and we're gonna do that. But what I'm saying is, what you just said is, yep, you're playing a game and you cannot win. Jack, you cannot win. Whatever you do, nothing stopping the next
I don't
person.
know. I'm
right?
I'm not an expert in,
I, you know,
in land use.
I never
Maybe our
thought,
residents, you can
I never
treat that
thought
comment as
15 years
rhetorical
later, we'd be
and
talking about
argumentative,
cutting a tree down.
And we can move on in my
Yeah, okay, good.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Counselor, I'm sorry, what did you say?
I advise the chair that the board could treat your comment as rhetorical, excuse me, and argumentative, and not something that we need to respond to.
Yeah,
It
and
can be
I-
acknowledged by the board, and I feel that we
Right.
can move on at this point.
And just to
I
come.
believe it's been duly noted.
Yes, and to come full circle, they bought a business next to a residential zone. They knew that. They bought houses next to a business. They're all in it together. Somehow, I agree with you. And I will encourage them to, I disappointed to hear that the abutter doesn't feel the communication, that I will encourage you to, my client, to improve the communication. They're, again, without beating a dead horse, they're trying to be a good neighbor under difficult circumstances. And I realize the board is trying to be fair under difficult circumstances.
Well, I would hope that if you come back with a plan, even if most of the plan is completed, that we could all agree that the issue that was presented to us in 2014 and 2015, for that period of time, is resolved, we move on. New issues may come up, fine, but in that regard, I would consider this issue is resolved. If that, whatever your plan is in accordance with the abutters, and you do whatever it is that you say you do, and there's peace for 2014 and 15, put it to bed, let's move, like, let's be done.
Did you said you did hire an engineering expert to do some studies?
Sound engineers, yeah.
Yeah, and did they provide any recommendations at all?
Well, the broadband was
Yeah, I'm just.
Yeah, the broadband was one, planting trees was another,
So you're talking.
you know, I
Did they
have to
issue a
get.
report or anything in
Continuing
writing
to
that
the
Yep,
June 7th.
yep.
you'd be willing to bring next time to share with us, or?
Yeah,
Oh.
we have an
Harry's.
accessory apartment coming.
Yeah, we got a report, and, yeah, we could probably do that. I gotta check with somebody.
They made any
before I-
kind of recommendations or gave you a report, it would be nice to have that. I mean, we're not gonna hire an engineer to go out and advise you
Right,
what to
right.
do, and we're not,
No, we can-
honestly, this is
Yeah.
more like planning stuff, but we're trying to.
I
And
know.
that, when we do that sound capturing information, that's a continuous, and I'm really kind of following up on a comment somebody made earlier. That's capturing decibel levels, right? You can look at it every second, every millisecond, once every 5 minutes, once every whatever, right? We did that for a number of months, and we've presented that to John, and we did present that to John in some reform, but we presented it to John the same way we presented to ourselves, and that shows the highs and the lows. I mean, we're
But
not,
perhaps do
we're not-
I mean, maybe to Jeff's
we know
point,
we got loud bangs.
maybe have them come back
Is
with
what
the
it is.
broadband alarms, that may
Yeah.
make the company look better than you did with the initial,
Oh, well, the
before.
broadband alarms were a big deal,
So,
big deal.
maybe an answer to your question, maybe they can do some more testing.
Well, yeah, and if need be, or, you know, you've done some, and you've got some data that we haven't seen, and I know there's some comments from the audience that we haven't seen it, and I'm suggesting that if you come with a plan that says, here's what we're gonna do, and we've got some expert, advice, that this will help in these ways. And it's a combination of things, that would be helpful. I mean, otherwise, we're just sort of taking each other's
Yep.
words for granted, but if there's somebody who's, maybe you bring them in here and let them tell us what, you know, what they think,
Or have
you know,
it
would
right
really
up there,
help.
whatever.
You
Well,
can't be
yeah.
perfect, but, and I think that would go a long way to having everybody be satisfied that we're all moving in the right direction to coexist.
Good.
My opinion.
Okay.
Yeah,
What do you
no one.
suggest,
I don't know.
what do you suggest for final action? I mean, we did
Can we,
it 2 months out there.
Do I have to sign this before we continue?
we continue, we're moving beyond how many days here.
Continue,
We're
but
doing
then
an extension.
for final action, we have last time we did it from, yeah, March 3rd, and we did it all the way to June, just in case. For final action, like for the decision.
Yeah, to July 7th.
Yeah, I mean, if you want another one, as
Same
I
thing.
said, we'll sign it.
Yeah, just to July, so I would
Okay.
put in July 7 on that plan.
Okay. I didn't want to know if you wanted, okay, July 7th.
I think we all hope July 7 will be the last time we're convening on
Is
this.
everybody's, no one's away though? It's after the 4th of July, but if it's everybody's pretty much
In July?
I'll be back on the sixth.
July 7th,
I'm here July 7th.
you'll be back, huh?
Sixth, yeah, I'll be here.
that date an extension, or was that a continuance?
Well, we're doing an extension of time, but they're gonna make a motion to continue.
So we're just waiting to sign before we continue.
Oh, sorry, Mitch, here you go.
It's a written request?
No, I mean verbally.
No.
Okay.
It's in writing. The critical thing is that the writing is filed, not verbal, or it never happened.
Right.
So in fact, a verbal request is
Gina,
filed with town clerk.
Right.
and I'll file that with the town clerk.
What do we say, July 7th?
Yeah. I think it's.
So do you want me to move that this board continue this hearing until July 7th? Immediately following, do you have any other hearings? that-
No, we will, but it's not in yet, so.
So July 7th at 7:30.
All right, thank you very much.
Second?
Thank you
Oh,
for your
second.
time.
Sorry. And again, thank you very much.
No, wait, we didn't vote
Wait,
yet.
wait.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Well, you can always say thank you.
Yeah, thank you again.
Now, how wrong can
All
you
right.
be?
Oh, are we done?
Can you send me copies of the requests?
I'm sorry, of
My
the what?
file,
Oh.
the written.